Hey everybody, is Aaron the pedantic over here? It's trying to hide me on this side of the screen, but it's me, Aaron the pedantic. I have some friends with me. I have Max Liao from Legion of Myth.
Yay!
And we have Appendix N Terrorist, otherwise known as Ash of Creativity, otherwise known as James Streisand. And we are here for some heckling and some possibly some suggestions on how to make this work. So let me give you all the backstory. Something that is very, very well loved in the old school gaming community, myself included. The backstory is that I have a player that I played with since the beginning. Basically, he was in my first campaign ever, which, it sounds impressive if it comes from somebody who's been doing this for a long time. For me, we've been gaming together about 4 years. He moved. Well, he didn't move away. He couldn't come anymore to my in-person games. Just so happened to be around the time that, everything shut down and all that kind of stuff. And then I got a text message from him yesterday saying, hey, maybe the day before, saying, hey, I moved back to this area. When can I start gaming again? And I was like, well, crap, I'm not running anything anymore. And the group that I was running is currently in another game being run by somebody else that's almost over, but they're about to start another game with another DM. And I don't want to take away the spotlight there. So I don't have my whole, plot of players that I can call on. So that means I'm gonna have to get some new ones probably. I'm gonna have to raise some new babies in the 5e, and maybe try and lure them to the dark side because we have cookies. That is the thing that is really making me pull in that direction. So the moment he said, I want to play in person, I was like, hell yeah. It's been, I don't know about y'all, but I haven't played in person since March 2020. So a year and a half. And I really, really want to get in on this. So y'all, if y'all have any thoughts, like go ahead and chime in, and then I'm going to hit some comments.
Well, I think you already hinted at something when you said, bring them in, then get them to the dark side. Because as I've said quite a bit, playing 5e is like working at Walmart or McDonald's. That's your entry-level job. I mean, I started at McDonald's for 2.5 years when I was 15 to 17 years old, but then you got to move on and get a career.
Ironically, it's also a retirement job, at least the Walmart one. I've known a few people that retired from like the post office or something like that, and then they're just working at Walmart. But
hey, I'm always glad when somebody's doing something, keep themselves productive, right?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. What do you think, James?
It's going to be tricky, especially if your point is to. But you've already lured some 5e players to other OSR games, so I don't think you're going to have too much trouble with that.
Yeah, that's the kind of joyous thing is that the guy that is that player I was talking about, I also got him to play Dungeon Crawl Classics and he loved it. I also got him to play Machinations of the Space Princess and he loved it. I want to say that I got him to play something else as well, but I can't remember if there was anything else. But he basically said he's open to whatever I want to run. It's just that the big problem is in my geographic area, if you try and organize those games, and I've done it before and using the same mediums that I would now, basically you get almost nothing. Like you might get some hits for Dungeon Crawl Classics, but a lot of those people, I know them and they're not wanting to game in person still. And some of them just dropped period. They just don't want to play at all. So it's kind of nuts. Let me hit comments real quick and then try and catch up on that. And then we'll get to Fiore. Let's see. Iran says it's 5e, Aaron. It's not going to work. We'll talk about that. Dark Knight says he couldn't come anymore. Brad clip this. Brad is just going to have a whole catalog of me saying things that sound sexual and often gay. What else?
I eagerly await the Aaron the Pedantic YouTube poops.
Okay. I hope someone makes a dwarf mage. So because of the fact that we playing with real like new people, probably my expectations as far as like trying to adhere to old school sensibilities and old school lore is pretty low. Max and I've already talked about like how I'm kind of I don't have the same things like, Max, you always talk about how Earth Dawn, that's fine. Like D&D, no.
Well, I'm a purist for like every IP. I've railed about everything from Battlestar Galactica to Stargate to whatever else. Like, if you do it right. So like when games change over the years, basic change to advanced, advanced change to second edition, you could see a progression. Then all of a sudden, WotC took over, and you have the script flip. So for me, it's all about the IP. So I try to do the right thing for the right IP. But I mean, let's be fair. That's what 5th edition is. If you were to say no dwarf mage, especially to a new player that's coming in and doesn't understand why you're saying that, and you're right. When you look around and the only games you can find are 5e, as much as I don't like it myself, why would you play something different? Why would you make it harder on yourself and your group, especially if your ultimate goal is after a year or so, convert them over?
Yep. And if I was willing to take my sweet ass time getting something together, I think that it wouldn't be a big deal, but I'm jonesing, man. I gotta get some real life gaming going again. And I plan on doing some OSR stuff online still. I'm not gonna stop that. But yeah. I kind of knew whenever I said it in my previous video, when I said I'm done with 5e, and everybody got all messed up because they thought I was quitting because of Tasha's, because I was uber triggered or something. I knew that I was like, but my players could convince me to do it because I freaking love those people, And honestly, running something like that is not as frustrating as playing it. That's just me, because like I need challenge as a player. There's a lot of times that you don't get that unless you're like running, unless the pure challenge is just pure combat, and it's like this fight. That's the challenge. Can you do this
rocket
fight?
tag?
All right, I'm back.
Welcome back. 6'2" dwarf mage, Doof says, and I think that is Max approved. Indigo says, "What's in real life? It's been years for me."
Do you plan on playing it rules as written, or are you going to put a little Aaron spin on there?
That's what I'm interested in. I want to know what our sensibilities are going to be.
You've been tag teamed on this one.
So player side, I'm going to try and keep alterations to a minimum, because I am going to be tagging it as, hey, this is a game for beginners, because that way I can say no feats and no multi-classing, and they don't look at me funny, because that's one thing, I don't want that shit in there. And I think that it will come off a little bit better from like, well, we don't want to get things too complicated. And, and then if they're like, oh, I can handle it, I'll be like, listen, I'm not putting up with that shit. I'll show real Aaron at that point. But as far as like anything else, a lot of those other things are going to be procedures that I'm adding that I didn't know existed before I got into old school stuff. I'm going to be trying to reinforce them more. The only real rule change that I can think of I'm actually going to possibly stick with is every time they fall unconscious, they get a point of exhaustion. Just because, to me, otherwise it can get kind of silly.
You don't like playing whack-a-mole?
Yeah, the whack-a-mole. I had that happen many times in my campaigns until I implemented that rule. Actually, I didn't do that rule because I didn't really know that shortcut. Instead, I was like, all of your failed saves carry over throughout the day, basically, which it also works, but just saying, no, you get exhaustion. That hits a little deeper, I think, sort of. Maybe not completely, but sort of. I mean, you can get to a point where you just die, first off. And then secondly, right, the fact that you just become at like 3rd level of exhaustion, just a piece of crap, really. Second level and first level, I think, are a little bit more tolerable. So a lot of the stuff that I'm looking at doing is going to be like, for instance, people complain about short rests. Well, a short rest is an entire hour. That's 3 random encounter checks. People complain about travel. I can't really say too much about that, because they are every time they get that full night's rest, they are going to get all that stuff back. There's nothing I can really do about that unless I change all kinds of stuff. And I could do that. That's not really what they're there for. they're going to be there ultimately for 5e, and so I just don't want to deviate too much. I'm thinking instead I'm just going to make stuff harder in other ways.
Okay.
Resource tracking, I'm not sure how much I'm going to make that an issue. I think that I'll offer it to them and say, this is something we can do, so that way you know how to do it. And so if you get into another game in the future that, then, and I can explain why it's a good thing to have. But the truth is that the system in a lot of ways undermines resource tracking, in my opinion. Like, for instance, all the attack cantrips, I know that they're not equivalent to an arrow. And I know that they don't always run out of arrows, but at the same time, I feel like that kind of hurts like ranged attacks and stuff like that. Oh, that is another thing. Ranged attacks, as written, if you fire into a melee, what is it? You just get disadvantage, or
you get disadvantage if you're trying to shoot past somebody.
Yeah.
So if your buddy is in front of the knoll, is in between you and the knoll that you're shooting at, if they're in your line of fire, you have disadvantage on that attack.
Yeah. So that I'm okay with. I may make it, if you roll low enough, then you might hit your friend. I don't know. I wouldn't just make it where it's like, some people run it as if that person just doesn't exist. You just shoot and you hit them as long as you hit the attack number. I'm not going to do that. At that point, I would use the old school method of roll randomly to see who the actual target is. But
so this is my ignorance kicking in.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you add that sense of survival / exploration if you don't have any sort of resource tracking? I understand it can be a lot of bean counting, and some of it does go overboard. I've never liked encumbrance, like to the actual coin of weight in any edition. But with that said, I've always liked the idea of limited resources while they're traveling. So they have to stop places, they have to explore other areas, avenues, and so forth, or they have to follow the river where they're easily followed. Things like that. How do you incorporate that if you're going to limit resource tracking, or how does 5e, like you said, kind of undermine that?
Well, James is developing something that handles a lot of this stuff as far as making it better for 5e. But as far as written, the things that undermine it, I think, are like they get spells very early that let them just create food and water. I think
Good berry, purify food and water.
So that's always been the case, though, unless they get it even earlier now.
Well, I mean, it would have to be, I think. So AD&D, I can't remember. Do clerics get spells at first level?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then I think it was like a second level spell in AD&D, wasn't it?
Goodberry was second level spell. Create food and water is a first level spell.
First level spell, food and water. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's fair enough. But at the same time, you would have to say, I'm going to use that today. You'd have to memorize that spell specifically. Whereas in 5th edition,
prepare it specifically. You would also have to roll up a cleric if you're rolling properly according to AD.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, there are a lot of other classes that can handle that stuff as well. Druid handles it. And you can just get a background because backgrounds are not optional as far as I know. And if you get like I can't remember if it's the Wanderer or the Outlander, one of them, it's just like you can get 5 food for 5 people, every time you travel, basically, every day. And it's a hand wave.
Exactly, because the 5th edition bean counting doesn't add anything to the survival challenge to begin with, really.
Yeah.
What adds to it is, do we have enough? It just doesn't have an exploration system. We've had chats about this beforehand.
So this is one of those situations, then, because I don't like bean counting for the sake of bean counting, and I'm actually saying this, but I want you to clarify because I'm ignorant on this. So the bean counting is actually just useless Excel spreadsheet nonsense to waste your time. Unlike, say, Forbidden Lands, where it's absolutely integrated in the core concept of the game and you need to perform it or you die.
I mean, I would say possibly because
with the exception of food. Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's food and light too because of the cantrip.
Right. You do take levels of exhaustion if you don't eat every day. But even then, it's like I don't consider you have to do this thing or you die. I don't consider that to be exploration or survival. by and
Well,
large.
it's definitely survival. As for exploration, the way Forbidden Lands does it,
it has to interact with something else in the game that is essential. Like you would have to have perhaps monsters need to have a cooking section that tells you how much they're how edible they are and what their parts can be used for. Something like Hackmaster, for instance. Or you would have to have some method of it. If hand waving it changes nothing about the game, which is the case for the food thing, because your players are not going to starve to death in any given game, frankly.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying is the difference between, say, Forbidden Lands. It's the best example I've got. Forbidden Lands and 5e. I get what you're saying, but in Forbidden Lands, it's definitely part of the game, because if you don't make your food check, you get the equivalent of what you guys call exhaustion and so forth. And all of a sudden, your rolls are worse. If you do find that monster, yesterday you could have beat it, but today you're so dang hungry you can't, and so forth. So that's what I was asking. So, okay, that's good clarification.
The game. That makes sense, even though it fills my definition of exploration and survival that I typically don't like. I typically like exploration and survival to have like, all right, going out provides advantages and it provides disadvantages. And here's a list of either, as opposed to I make a check to see if my character doesn't die today. That I tend to disregard, except in situations of, unique situations like magic or whatever, environmental
Organ trail
mode. Yeah.
See, that's where we're different on that one, because I actually like that part of it, because I like things that delay the characters so they're just not bebopping around from place to place like they own the joint. But at the same, I do get it.
It's a delay. It doesn't actually change much of the gameplay otherwise, unless there's something else.
It's a hex scroll. I mean, Forbidden Lands is basically a hex scroll, so every hex you go into is something new.
Yeah, that changes whether you get to a given place a day or two later. That could change that changes the gameplay a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's it's just very anemic in 5e,
Gotcha.
and like the fact that everybody has dark vision. I know that means they'll get like a -5 penalty on their passive perception if they're going through dark areas, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that you just really don't see a whole lot of. It's diminishing returns, I would say, especially compared to the old stuff. Whenever I was running BX, it's like everybody is concerned about this stuff all the time. The only thing I would say is maybe even I was about to say even things that give them bright lights, but that fucking light cantrip. Almost there's always somebody in the party that will make sure that somebody has a light cantrip. They'll find the ways to make sure they don't have to deal with the problem. And if they really have that to a certain degree, they may end up trying to do that with other things too. Like, I don't ever want to have to use comprehend languages as a spell.
What?
Or something like.
You hurt me right in my soul.
So then they'll say, well, I'm gonna not necessarily comprehend languages, but I don't want to ever have to go and get something translated, some text or whatever. So it's like, I'll just get that warlock invocation. Yeah. So that I can read all written text. Just stuff like that. Let me catch up on comments and then we'll go back to it. Iran says, I can't play in real life. My physical player base is awful. The people around me are pretty nice, but there's just not a whole lot of anything else other than 5e. There is an AD&D group, but I want to run my own game. I just like running my own games. Arnman says it's much better for the GM. Condor says, out of 30 years, I only took a year and a half off. I run 2 games face-to-face currently. That's awesome. Yeah, I really just needed time off because of, the thing. Okay. Let's see. Trying to. Tasha's is 5e taken to its logical conclusion, says Dark Knight. It seems that they're not quite done with what they want to do.
They're still writing epilogues.
Yeah, you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, it's Brad says Aaron has facial hair, so he looks like an adult again, and James is shaved, so he looks 13.
I had to change my hair around because I looked like a girl briefly from the left side.
That could get more views.
PDX Gear. Oh, yeah, that's true. PDX Gear Con.
I don't know if some people are into that.
Says hardcore mode. If you're talking about 5e hardcore mode, I've heard about it. It looks decent. For my purposes, I'm probably gonna not do that.
If you have the
'cause like I said-
liberty to do hardcore mode, you might as well be playing something else.
maybe. I mean, I can kind of see that, but like, I really want to. I want to get new players so that I can help develop their perception of what 5e and D&D is like, because that first game means something, or the first few games, I think. After that, you start forming your own opinions, and then you're a lost cause, and you're like, I don't know, watching hours and hours of Nerdarchy like I used to when I first started.
See,
Really
those
is
guys
a dark
live next to
place.
me.
Say what?
Those guys live next to me.
Oh,
I found
for
that
real?
out a few years ago. I never got to go. Right about the time I was going to go say hi, the pandemic started.
They seem like really nice guys. It's
Oh,
just
they're very
that
chill.
it's very this very esoteric knowledge about character classes and interactions and building stuff. And I'm just like, there was a time I loved that, and that's whenever I was a player only. After that, I was like, I'll play a champion fighter, and I will swing my sword extra the same. I don't really care that much, but I'm again, I think that my perception's skewed as someone who primarily DMs.
Right.
Let's see. Death at 0 HP. I think that with 5e that would be really, really rough. Just because the damage values all around are much higher.
It would be dumb. They're all tuned with the idea in mind that you have 3 death saves.
Mm-hmm.
You can even play around with the number of death saves. We have a few critters in our encounter manual. Some of our drow, because we have entries for all the humanoids and stuff like that. They're in their own section. We have entries for the drow. And some of the drow deal an additional, when they knock you down, they will deal an additional death save, right? Immediately upon that. So that's a little extra, and so you can play around with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the values do have 3 death saves in mind.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Not to mention, it takes ages to make a character, especially if 5e isn't mechanically interesting to you, and especially if there are no feats or multi-classing, you're gonna. That's even longer. That's hours and hours at the table. It's like, well, the character's gone now.
Yeah, that's a solid point. I mean, I would say it doesn't take quite as long with AD&D. I built my cleric up. At least I was doing 2nd edition. I mean, first edition is slightly different, but my 2nd edition cleric, it was mostly just after I did my roll, just looking at the tables and then just filling in the blanks, and that's pretty much it. And then spending my money for starting up, and
that's probably the most time intensive thing, is deciding what your starting goal goes to.
Yeah, really, it is. Yeah. That is true. Okay. Well, some weirdo named Legion of Myth said should try all types of games, not just OSR.
Oh, ban that fool.
I agree with that, absolutely.
I'll be sending Aaron copies of my game once it's out.
Say what?
I'll be sending you copies of my game once it's out.
Hell yeah.
That could be your new school.
Yeah. Maybe. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. The whole thing that precipitated this before that player texted me was I was trying to organize an actual fucking monsters game, and I didn't really get a whole lot of hits. I got some hits, from people that were like, I wish I could, but I can't because X reason or Y. And so I'm just like, fuck it. I know that I could get a 5e game pretty quick. So, and then my player friend texted me, and I was like, well, he wants to play. So here we go. Spider asks, they are there for 5e. What does that even mean? So what I mean by that is a lot of times people go in with some preconceived notions based off of stuff that they've either seen or heard about how 5e runs, or they already are very familiar with the rules as written and all that kind of stuff. So they don't really want to tinker with it, especially if they're pretty new. I mean, a lot of people that aren't new still don't want to tinker with it. And so they're there for 5e aside is already a big enough thing. whenever it's like you add the extra layer of they're there for what they saw in Critical Role, it adds an even bigger issue. And that's one of the things I want to try and nip in the bud for some people by just trying to get them on board before they get into that and start seeing it that way. So that way I can be like, it doesn't have to be like this, you know?
Yeah, and you might as well.
Might as well. It's funny though, because people were responding to that J. Scott Garibay video. I didn't watch it myself, but I watched some of the reactions. I'll watch it later. It's not like I'm not
Oh
gonna watch
yeah, I need to watch that video still. Like from what people were saying, it looked hilarious.
His newest one, the one about if you don't play 5e.
That one too, but I was talking about the one from last week where he's like, is that the same guy that's saying that we need to build a monument to Gary Gygax that's larger than the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me, that's copywritten from my stream. You now owe me royalties.
Well, yeah. So he was basically saying if you're only playing OSR and you're not contributing in the 5e conversation, then you're harming society. Basically, it was kind of the thing he was saying, and it's ironic because like he said that, and then I was like, well, now I don't want to play 5e. Like fuck you. But then I'm all like, but my player wants to play. I'm like, I don't think that I'm defiant enough that I'm going to deprive myself of being able to sit at the table with one of my best players again. So,
which way, pedantic man?
Which way, indeed. My way is that I'll eat crow if I feel like it's necessary. So some might say that I do it too much. Okay. Arnman says, I would let the players do all the resource tracking on their own. If they are into it, they'll have fun tracking it. Otherwise, who cares? Yeah, that's how a lot of people have done it. And I track that stuff regardless. Whenever I am a player, it doesn't really matter. It's just, I felt kind of frustrated whenever it's just like, they're just throwing stuff. But another thing that a lot of people forget about is like, there's a lifestyle expense cost. A lot of people forget about that. And that's one way to, use up their gold. I mean, if you're doing that along with the other things, it starts getting a little bit more significant than it does otherwise. But
which is a shame because that would otherwise be a cool mechanical hook for things like carousing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or downtime actions, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that's another house rule that I'm going to use. Not really how, I guess it is. I'm going to use training rules. So, they're going to have to spend money to level up, and time, of course. Just to spite people that don't like training rules. Nah, really just so that they have thoughts in mind of, well, time is passing. Because I've run a lot of 5e games that it just felt like they were going from nothing to gods in a month, Okay. Which was my fault.
I have been in games like that. It's been funny when it's like, we go from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, I suppose, in a matter of about 2 weeks, just because of, we more or less got lucky in a few fights that were very high XP.
That is true. I mean, but then like you could enter the whole level limit thing or XP limit. Like you can't get more than, I think is a level and then the next, like all the way up until
you have to level up first before you could get the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you would be just under whatever else it was.
Yeah. But
which would be fitting because we leveled up 3 times. So we would have leveled up once and then next session, basically, we would have gone to the next one.
Yeah.
Unless we had to pay for training.
I don't know. How do you feel about that rule, Max?
Training costs and time. I love it.
Well, just the limit, like you can't get more XP than the next level all the way up to that. Like
when I do Dungeons and Dragons, that's literally how I do it. I don't bank it. I mean, I've been kind of jaded by Earth Dawn for so many years now that I have some of that in my head. But no, that's exactly how I run it. And your choice is to either leave the dungeon. But here's the thing: I level people up so slowly anyway. They can't tell the difference. After a year, if you're level 10, you must have done something golden, and that's playing every week because I believe in the old adage of 3 to 5 adventures, not sessions, adventures per level, and I try to balance things out by that Doesn't always work at first level, but you get what I'm saying. And then also they bank up everything for their training and so forth. They need the money for it, and then they get that time, they move forward. But I also let them create magic spells and whatever nonsense that they're allowed to do in the meantime as well. All of a sudden they're a year older, and now they go back out and level some more.
Heck yeah. Malaki says, my biggest gripe with backgrounds is that it steps on the toes of classes. There's some things I do kind of like about it though. But I agree with that sentiment, especially whenever you combine that with expertise. Because if you're doing a class that doesn't normally get some kind of particular background proficiency or whatever, then now you have it. Now you can apply expertise to it, and now you're better at that thing than the person who's more archetypal in that, instead of just, I don't know, just gating it or something, or just giving some kind of static bonus for, I don't know. But the one thing I do kind of like about it is about backgrounds is that it has that bit in there about, like, you can go to somebody of your clerical order, somebody who believes in your god or something, and they'll give you a place to stay or something. I kind of don't like that it's
social or exploration max.
Yeah. It does lean into that. I kind of don't like that it's player side necessarily. I kind of wish that was just like in the DM's guide, and it's like, this is what they do. So that way you can decide more plainly if that's the case or not. Maybe I would have wanted that for feats and multi-classing too. Put it all in the DM's guide and just be like, players, you get to clear these classes.
Make the 5e DMG worth a damn.
Yeah. Nobody fucking reads the thing unless they're like, I don't know. Most
looking for treasure. But feats and multi-classing are D&D. Certainly multi-classing. Feats, you could have a little bit of an argument about that. But multi-classing is D&D. So that generally speaking needs to be in there. I'm offended that they even put it under optional rules. That seems silly to me.
Well, I feel like, so I don't know. I've never been a big fan of multi-classing. I mean, it has obviously been around.
GM
has been around for quite a while. I think that.
Can I ask you why?
Well,
I hear this a lot.
Primarily because a lot of it, at least in 5e, everything is front loaded for the most part. So whenever you get that new class, you get a lot with that new class, and it really throws things on. That's why dips are so common. I might say that if you're doing like an absolute split, like this level, that level, this level, that level, and that's like your concept from the beginning, I might be more amenable to it.
See, that's my lizard brain that you teased right there, because I forgot you're talking about 5e, and I'm thinking multi-classing in 1e and 2e, hey, you can do it all you want, because my human's still getting to level 20. You're at what, 9? Good luck with that.
Yeah. I was going to say the way that that's handled in older editions from, because I never did any multi-classing in that either, just because I'm weird and I like
dual versus multi-classing, I think, is the thing we're looking for here.
What is it?
Dual versus multi-classing.
Yeah, well, I mean, even when you have dual and multi-classing, you would have to split your XP up quite substantially, and you didn't.
You would have to fulfill certain. You would basically have to spend a level, as for instance, the level 1 mage is example given in the thing. Even if you're like a level 6 fighter,
that's for dual classing, yeah.
Yeah,
you needed to get up to the level that your original class was before you could use those abilities too, right? Or you wouldn't get any XP.
Yeah, I saw too many DMs though say they didn't like dual classing rules because it screwed over the humans too much and allowed humans to basically multi-class, and that always made me scratch my head as to what.
I feel like
it was pretty hard. You would be at a considerable disadvantage for quite a while.
Yeah, it would be difficult, especially in 5th edition. Multi-classing is sort of the refuge for people who hate how ridiculously anemic 5e characters are. And basically, let me add a little bit of flavor in a fashion that I would be able to do if I was playing 4th edition or a classless game, maybe like Savage Worlds or something like that. And the Genesis games and the Genesis fantasy supplements.
My proposed solution would just be to add new classes or subclasses, but I know that wouldn't give the meat that a lot of them are looking for.
It wouldn't fill the mechanical niche that it's looking for, because the moment you add a new class, like if you give me an Eldritch Fighter class, right? That's either it's going to suck, because it takes these two concepts and tries to fit them into, for instance, 5e's class structure, which already blows. It's horrific, terrible to design for, terrible to make new content for, unless you're, I guess, at the bare minimum of homebrewing. Maybe it's fun, or it's really good, and therefore it's more multi-classing fodder.
But so, like, maybe an unpopular opinion, but like, what's the difference between an Eldritch Knight and like a 1E Ranger?
Not much, I don't think. Not much spell progression. And even that's
so
pretty close.
like, I don't know, maybe those. So like, I mean, and that sort of works. Sorry, I kind of dropped into this stream. I have a vague idea what we're discussing. I think it's like high fantasy versus low fantasy. But what's the like? Can you guys bring me up to speed on the central issue?
Oh no, that was a side conversation because people started using the wrong channel to discuss shit in my Discord.
All right, guilty. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Aaron.
Stop making rabbit holes.
But no, this is all about the fact that I'm going to start running 5e in person and talking about.
Isn't your like? So I heard a shameful little fact, and I came onto this stream. Aaron. This is an intervention, because from what I have heard, and people can confirm, is that in fact the one game, that's the most run on the entire Aaron the Pedantic Discord is. It's not like something wholesome like OSE or even something like suboptimal where we frown upon it, like maybe 2E Zakara Lands of Fate. No, sir. It's not even Apocalypse World.
I'm an Al-Qadim fan. Come on now.
Al-Qadim's pretty cool. But it is 5E, Mr. the Pedantic. The game that you guys run the most is 5E, or at least so Fiore the Eccentric assured me, and I did zero fact checking to back this up. And I'm just going to assume that this is the literal truth.
Fiore,
what do you have to say for yourself?
Unless they've been playing it after hours and not using my calendar, then no. It would probably be it would have been OSE because we did that for 6 months with several games a week. And then like probably second might be DCC, and then third might be Swords and Wizardry. I would assume. I might be missing.
And I'm looking for like dice rolls in the 5e venting chamber. That's what I'm sinking to now to see if like they're secretly, covertly trying to run it. Nah.
Yeah, we have a special place for people to complain about 5th edition, just for other people that don't want to see complaints about 5th edition. That's what we do.
Right.
But you are going to run it now.
Say what?
But you are going to run 5e in person.
Yeah. If it's the game I can get in person, that's the game I'm going to run in person.
So Prince of Nothing is the tough love. I just want you to know that we still love you, Aaron. We're still your friends. If you need somebody to talk to, if 5e just doesn't go your way, if you fall into that trap again, we're here for you. We will only beat you slightly.
We're reaching out to you, Aaron.
I will throw a bunch of D4s on the ground and make you walk on them.
As OSR DMs, we're reaching out, okay? It's what Gary would have wanted.
Dungeon Masters Anonymous.
We have to build that statue first.
Yeah, I discussed it too. It's going to actually. They're going to put him on Mount Rushmore. Actually, it's gonna, it'll be large enough to devour like all 5. The other presidents.
As well, didn't we say that there was going to be a 1-to-1 replica of the Tomb of Horrors there too?
It will be there too. Yeah, the Federal Reserve will be like all the gold will be like transferred there to make it to lure the adventurers in. Yeah.
No joke. If you build it, people will come. There would be people that are like, I'm willing to take that. I'm willing to take those risks.
Final boss, Janet Yellen.
So what you're telling me is that it would become like a real life X-Crawl Classics where it's a televised blood sport.
JP says, imagine thinking that 5e is a complex game. Comparative to other RPGs and stuff like that, it's absolutely not. But It's just heavier on certain things than I'd like it to be.
Cosplay. It's heavier on cosplay. You have to wear the right costume and you have to wear it properly.
Heavy foundation, plastic tiefling horns.
Right.
You know,
it's the distinction would simply be how much stuff there is in it, rather than how many interlocking mechanisms interact with the other moving parts and are dependent on those parts.
Right.
5th edition is very siloed. There is perhaps a lot of stuff compared to what OSR folks are used to, but doesn't. I don't know. Yeah,
so what you're saying, the framework is very, very simple and basic, but like there's a lot of options and customization.
Yeah, but
I wouldn't say options and customization. That's again just compared to maybe some OSR games like, I don't know, PX. But
as far as OSR games, you're right. But look at like AD&D 2nd edition. How many times that stupid thing jumped the shark? I don't see 5e as too much different than AD&D 2e, except for in 5e they don't know how to say no. In AD&D 2e we said no. You're not going to play a Wemmick. Have a nice day. That's like the big thing that I notice is different. Otherwise, I have to throw AD&D 2e in the same category as 5e, and I love my 2e.
Yeah, the play culture is a lot more welcome a lot less welcome, at least from what I've experienced, to being told no when it comes to race options and things like that.
Aaron, there you go. You have to be the parent at the table.
Well, no, that's one pleasant option, because if I come to the table, if I'm being told this is something this goes back to a question Aaron was asked earlier. If I'm said like, hey, let's play a 5th edition game, I buy 3 books, I've spent $150 on them or whatever, and I come to the table and I am told like, no, we're not using this. I'm all spells above 3rd level have concentration. You're not allowed to cast any spells above 3rd level. Everybody is, in fact, actually just playing Human Fighter. But I did convert the Book of 9 Swords to this other thing. I should be able to say, what? This is so, like, fuck you. You told me we were playing 5e. That's one thing I hate about tabletop RPG culture is the amount of adjustments GMs make. There are places to silo that, and where it's appropriate, and where actually it's quite healthy for GMs to engage in that behavior, and the system gives them support to do that. But a lot of that, you'll probably see it in the comments here, just chopping things up at random. It's like, what the fuck? I was told we were playing XYZ.
And this is why I've come to the conclusion that it's just better to make your own damn system.
Yes.
No, that's
like in the brackets, it's going to have a note in the beginning about if your historian, not your game, your historian starts making changes to these specific areas, get together with the rest of the group, take them aside and say, we would like you to stop adjusting these, or we're going to have to put somebody else in the historian seat, and that'll be fine. You'll have an opportunity to be a player. We're not mad at you. It's just you're breaking the game a little bit. That's not how this is supposed to work.
Wasn't that in the old days just called a homebrew setting? You didn't have to make your own game.
No, but also I want to rail against that, because one of the big problems in the OSR is that there's like 500 too many different shit brews clogging everything up.
Yes.
I didn't say you had to sell it.
Which is why they're supposed to stay siloed. You're supposed to make your shit brew so nobody else plays it.
I'm not playing Labyrinth Lord. I'm playing Delving Deeper, and here torches last 7 turns, right? And and you only need 3/4 of the rations, and there's a new type of currency, the not the copper piece, the lead piece, which is worth even less, right? Like this sort of shit.
Yeah.
Just write a one page homebrew rules. There's some Jesus. I remember.
No, don't do that. Make your own game. Waste that time. And
No,
keep it
don't listen. Don't listen to him. Don't do it.
Else.
Okay. No, so all you prospective dreamers out there that want to create like your own game, which will be like 250 pages and devoted to your daughter, don't do it. Or if you do, don't send it to me to review.
Well,
okay?
What if somebody, let's say there's somebody I know that's making his own game, but it's absolutely a complete different twist. If you play OSR, you'll understand it, but it doesn't use a D20. I know somebody doing that.
If it's different enough, yes, by all means. If it really if you can just if you're basically just remaking BX with 2 pages of house rules, just do a house rule pamphlet.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on that.
Don't do a house rule pamphlet. Keep it out. Well, you can in OSR. That's the thing. OSR is so used to that at this
But it's
point.
just like making
You
your
might
own
as well.
setting. I like people that make their own settings, have their own gods, have their own stuff. If you're only changing 5 rules, don't call it a new game. Just say, I'm playing
Right.
Swords and Wizardry, Osric, D&D, whatever you want to call it, BX. But here's my setting. I mean, look at Dragonlance.
No, I don't have a problem with setting. I have a problem with people going in and changing it, hacking up essential rules because they think they're designers.
No, 100% agree. 100% agree.
But in the OSR, that's a little different because a lot of you guys have been iterating on the same games, the very like identical rule sets for 5 decades. So I can't really.
But this is where I get yelled at by the OSR because I don't ascribe to their definition of it. I don't believe that OSR is a 6 stat block game, must do this, must be in this format, so forth. I believe that OSR is a feel. In fact, DM Bloodworth, who, if he's still in chat here, has the best definition of the OSR as far as I'm concerned. And there were 3 different definitions depending on old school Renaissance, old school Revival, or old school roleplay. I'm not going to try to define them because I'll screw it up. But anyway, and I absolutely ascribe to that because I think there's also a feel for it. I will tell you that Forbidden Lands is an OSR game. Oh, I didn't get struck by lightning. Good.
Based on the gameplay, and probably the outcomes and the direction within the fantasy milieu. You're engaged in hex crawls. You mentioned earlier.
Right. Yep.
So if Aaron engages in hex crawls, it will have a bit of OSR flavor to it.
It has almost all the stuff that you would find in basic. I'm sorry. Go on.
Into the Odd by I think I want to say something like it's maybe Chris McDowell. I think so. Yeah, Chris McDowell. I think it only had 3 primary stats and hit points. It didn't have attack rolls. Like you always hit. But it was still very recognizably like OSR derived. So yeah, like I do believe that you can innovate a little bit. There's even people trying to do whatever. Kevin Crawford does Traveler in a sort of vaguely BX-ish system, which is pretty good. So yeah, totally.
He does Traveler?
Stars Without Numbers is basically
Traveler, I was just saying, because I was just going to say that Stars Without Number. Okay, I see what you did there. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Brian Patterson says, I hate the power creep in 5e and most of the classes are the same.
There's no power creep in 5e. There is shit power to mediocre power.
Well, I do miss and I'm a little behind on 5e, so like one of you, especially like Aaron, will be sure to correct me if I'm wrong, but like one of the things that I sort of enjoyed in D20, and yes, it is still more fun to make characters than to actually play it, but like I did play it, right? You had people started coming up with these really weird classes that don't really function according to the fighter, cleric, wizard, or thief paradigm, or they try to, right? Like,
but that's so boring.
Yeah, I know, terrible, right? Yeah, who wants to play a stuffy 50-year-old game? Yeah, I want a spiffy new shiny game. Yeah, that's right. No, but I mean, they tried with varying degrees of success, right? What is it, the Artificer or something? That was okay.
Yeah.
And there was some sort of D20 third-party hack of Transformers where you had one class which was like a robot that you could, like, your entire ability was to have like many other robots that your body was composed of, or you can transform into a fortress. Like, I don't think it works.
Start over. What?
This is
in 5e. This is in Dungeons and Dragons.
This is D20. This was on the D20 system. Yeah, by Fantasy Flight Games. It was called Mechamorphosis, and it was like it was a very obvious Transformers ripoff, but I didn't have the license.
Okay, but it wasn't a fantasy game. It was just okay.
No.
Okay. Oh God, scared the crap out of me.
So I will say that from people that actually, well, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I do know some people that actually are very invested in 5e and like play all the new materials that comes out. And a lot of them had been saying that basically each new subclass is more and more powerful than the previous one. So that may be the power creep that he's referring to. Like, there was a certain point people were saying, like, if you're playing a fighter, you should play a Rune Knight because it makes all of the other ones kind of irrelevant.
Can you make a game that doesn't do that though?
I don't know, but that's why I'm basically like, I'm just gonna say PHB only. Fuck you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's it. Rifts has that problem. If you ever get into the Palladium genre, if you do the world books, oh my God, just say no. But again, AD&D second edition with the kits started getting crazy, especially towards the end.
Yeah, anything that obsoletes the fighter as like a valuable, as a viable
Yes.
choice, or turns it into
Agreed.
like a suboptimal choice is pretty bad. I mean, I guess the paladin did in a way, but like at least that was very rare. It's like a
That's the thing.
one
Is
in
the
100 shot.
games, you can design a game in such a way that it maintains, like, for instance, if the fighter is not just a person who swings a sword, but is a warlord, gets a keep at 9th level, has taps into multiple modes of play. This is the other thing I want to bring up to Aaron. Tapping into multiple modes of play.
Like the kits, you had some of those kits, and you just got like the fighter, but like with more bennies, and then with a few like minor drawbacks, and so like time would tend to like favor that sort of specialization.
No.
Like,
so what I'm saying is,
fighter,
if you include, if the base design of your game taps into multiple different modes of play, like again, the fighter gets a keep and a men at arms at 9th level, or the thief gets a rogue's tavern or whatever you would call it at 9th level. Tapping into these different modes of play does keep it from being just like, oh, well, this damage value and this thing. And most of that's bullshit in 5th edition anyway. It's very minor adjustments. And most of the fun is in the character options that give you asymmetrical modes of play. But you're going to have that problem in any game where, like, all right, well, it's only combat. Well, if it's only combat, then we have things that do work and we have things that don't work. But some of the things that don't work made it into the player's handbook.
I totally agree with that. But I think, especially with 2E, the problem was that like even those those kitted out guys, or whatever, the 1E Cavalier class, you would just have like the same abilities as a fighter. So you would also have the same asymmetrical stuff. I think more or less. I'm not 100% sure whether the Cavalier would get just as many followers, or would have access to weapon specialization or whatever. But it did, like, at some point it does feel like you're just you're playing an inferior copy of like something else.
Now we all know it never happened, but it was supposed to be really difficult to play a paladin, not only on the roleplay aspect side of it with the alignment restrictions and so forth, and with the stats. But we all know that if somebody said, I want to play a paladin, that person got to play a paladin.
In high school,
you can play a paladin.
Our first, like,
play
when
with
we were
those
13, we would still have a paladin. Yeah, like the first character somebody would make. Yeah, no, very true.
Some of these comments are interesting.
A lot of great comments today. Keep them coming, guys. Let's see. Condor says, I thought this was going to be a roast. Well, that was my problem. I don't have enough people that hate me in my Discord. So,
do you want me to pretend to?
Do you have to pretend?
Just kidding. It's a 5th. If we could make it a reverse roast, we could go through and start roasting commenters.
Ooh,
there you
that's
go.
what you do. Earn chat, because, I have viewers.
Let's see. People were talking about, in fact, I think this was one of the things Condor was saying is like leaning into the old school sensibilities as far as like themes and lore and stuff like that, like making orcs incredibly evil and all that kind of stuff. And I could go for that.
Well, if you just play Player's Handbook, that shouldn't be a problem, because that other nonsense didn't start until later.
That's true. That's probably the revisions that they're talking about are probably just going to be thematic stuff like that,
Well, they're not even major. The people who want these revisions, unless they're fifthlets and baying it on on Twitter or something like that, they're like, nah, they're just appeasing. They're just trying to appease. And it's
whenever you do see those comments and then you look at the kind of stuff they're talking about for gaming, they're not playing 5e for the most part.
Yeah.
Are they playing anything other than little at-home role-play sexual parties?
No, they're playing Powered by the Apocalypse, Genesis, Vampire the Masquerade.
Okay, Vampire, yeah, at-home sex party, got it.
Which really just means that they're being cultural critics and they're just trying to change the world in the way that they want the world to be changed by changing what other people put in their brains, basically.
A little bit, yeah.
Which is that's my problem. Like, when it comes to their games, I've tried a few games that are, indie games. I've tried Powered by the Apocalypse games, and I'm trying Troika. We'll see how that goes. I'm opening my mind to stuff out there. I don't want to just be an OSR guy just because if I'm still relatively new and I haven't experienced a lot of that wide world yet. And I don't want to speak out of ignorance whenever I condemn that shit, basically.
Right.
So, but when it comes to people just trying to ruin your fun, it's like that age-old expression, I just want to grill.
They're trying to stick a camera up your ass while you're playing tabletop games. It's like, fuck off.
Yeah, don't do that unless you go through my insurance first.
That's an OnlyFans page right there.
Yeah.
There you go. And now they're allowing it again. So there we go.
You know this from experience? Just asking. A friend wants to know.
No. Everybody was talking about it on Twitter. They were all upset. No more porn and stuff like that on it. Man,
there isn't enough on the internet already.
Monetized now. But they were saying all that, and then I saw the updates on all that kind of stuff. So social media. I am one of the things that this could make people hate me, but I think that one of the new marks of of manliness is to have never given any money to OnlyFans. But that's just me. Some people may
setting the bar pretty low.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe it's different across the seas, but that's a pretty low bar.
You got to start somewhere, and these days, that's achievable for more people than something that may have been the bar in the past. Okay, what else we got? This is interesting. Pete Giant says, if you never have to touch anything, never worry about going hungry, worry about being able to see, then you aren't playing D&D. That's, I think, one of the reasons that I was so strongly wanting to adjust 5th edition. I was wanting to take away cantrips. That gets rid of your, attack cantrips mostly, but honestly, cantrips in general. Because people are like, well, I'm just going to use Mage Hand. Just to touch just about everything. I can't lift anything very heavy, but I could not be there whenever I am, setting off a trap or something like that.
Yeah, like a half of all traps becomes completely inert.
Which,
already is the case anyway, because the saves are so high for everything. Or not the saves are so high, but players can make saving throws very, very easily.
If you use the guidelines, it just depends. Because if I remember correctly, it's been a while, so I'm way out of date. I think that a decent trap in 5e, and it might be tiered, but I feel like it would be like DC 15 or something for a save for like just a medium trap.
Yep. That's what we're going with for Chilmus Valley, and that's in the more difficulty class.
Yeah. So let's say that you don't have any dexterity bonus and you don't have a class that has a proficiency bonus on those saves. You got roughly about the same save as you would have back in the day. If you don't have,
right. I was going to talk about that. The issue was, like you were saying, proficiency bonuses and generally high modifiers.
Yeah, the modifiers do make it a little bit more tricky because everybody wants to get high dexterity if they can, unless they're a fighter. And even then it's like, they're kind of sad about it. They're like, I'm usually going last. And, I
know. I've had some players go into it like, oh, well, I'm just going to spec into all high physical stats. I'm going to let the other guys basically take care of me when it comes to the mental stats. Like I'll be a high strength, high dexterity stuff. They're monsters in combat. It's fun when you get into player party composition.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the saving throws in all of the saving throws in 5e are ability score based, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is at least a sort of drawback with that sort of optimization.
Yeah, the assumption is that you're going to succeed if you're doing something that you're proficient in. You're going to succeed about 60% of the time. And the 5th edition and traps still work that way. And it goes to maybe about 80% of the time once you get into the really higher, based on how players catch up to the difficulty class, but that's still for things that they're good at. The problem with traps is the selection of traps that you have and the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Lots of
was this
GMs
the
stop
first,
using traps once they let off the gas. Everybody stops checking for traps, and everybody stops using traps because of the the way the mechanics
was
are
this the
written.
first edition, by the way, to codify traps in such a or so to describe traps in such a codified manner? It's like actually one of the charming things I thought about, like 1E in most OSR games. You don't have a book of traps, right? A trap
Grimtooth.
manual in the same way.
Bring in
Grimtooth's
some of the bring in some of those crazy.
Admittedly, yes. It didn't really have stats for those traps, though. I think just
No,
more
because
like
they were the size of buildings.
A control rating. Yeah, exactly. There was all these screwball traps, and I think they did make a system neutral dungeon, which was really nothing but like a horribly unfair meat grinder death traps. Yeah.
Yep.
I have the DCC Trap Sylvania book, and it's pretty neat. Well, I mean, as far as what Pete's saying about if you're not doing all those things and you're not playing D&D, I can see your point. I feel like Max, it has illustrated that before, that it's WotC 3rd edition. Was it 3rd edition?
Yeah,
WotC
well,
3rd edition.
yeah.
And I think that's true. I mean, it does have, it's closer to old school, but it's.
I mean, I get when people say that they don't like the bean counting, it slows down the game, it's boring and whatnot, especially when people only play 2 hours now instead of 8 to 10 hours like we used to. But at the same time, there isn't, to me, there's a multi-aspect, multiple facets to playing. There's the combat side, there's the role play side, and I'm not talking strict LARPing, but there's that, I'm in town, let's interact a little bit side. There's also the survival element bean counting side, because there's more than one way to die and more than one way to survive. The exploration, however you handle that, even if the map is known, you still have to explore or get somewhere with random encounters and so forth. If a game says, I don't have random encounters, guess what? You do now, because I'm putting them in. Things like that.
What type of random encounters? What kind of survival is the question? Because if it's going to be, I'm going to spend, because the character is never going to die via starvation. They will spend an additional hour each session or more focusing on avoiding starvation, but the end result will be the same. They've avoided starvation.
Not if they're being chased.
That's where people get annoyed with these survival mechanics. If it's a little bit more gradated, or if it's more asymmetrical, or if there are more advantages to going out, like going out and hunting. If I choose to hunt rather than fish, that changes the different rewards I'm going to get from my activities while surviving. That's far more attractive to people.
You're absolutely speaking right to Forbidden Lands, because that's how Forbidden Lands handles it. I mean, I'm not saying that D&D is doing it right by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that in general principle, I like to have a survival mechanic there, because if you got the long rest, short rest, and I know people say this all the time. Well, all you have to do is just keep hunting them down. Don't let them have that short rest. Well, a single trope gets old after the first time. So you have to find different ways of mixing it up. It's kind of the same thing with the survival thing. I can't just keep having you chased by mercenaries so you don't have the 8 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is to hunt. But there are other things that can happen. You need to stay close to the river. That makes you easier to track. Flying creatures can, depending on what the nature of game you're playing, et cetera, et cetera. So I can keep you moving so that you can't stay in one place. And that's just one example. How much crap did you bring into the dungeon? Apparently nowadays people clear out dungeons in one go. That still boggles my mind. I don't fully understand that.
That's just completely hand-waved encumbrance. Yeah, I would say even if a mechanic isn't terribly dynamic, like the way food or starvation is handled in D&D, where I don't think it's even explicitly mentioned in like say BX, like what the effect is. We just know you have to eat, right? It still anchors the game in a lot of fundamental ways. So like you describe, encumbrance, it becomes sort of its own thing, where you have to. Where going into a dungeon becomes much more than just like fighting all of the monsters there, but you have to think like, okay, like we're going to take, I don't know, like what pack mules, and then you suddenly run into another problem, like, okay, how do we protect these animals, et cetera, right? So like on the one hand, the game gets a sort of life, a verisimilitude to it that it would otherwise not have, and on the other hand, it does bring with it like logistical challenges, which I think is a
Right.
fun
Yeah.
little part
At
of the
what
game.
point does that become just so annoying you don't want to do it anymore? I guess it's the challenge for every dungeon master.
Yeah,
No,
and
that's
it's
challenge for the
and it would be
game.
like a percentage of time. I
That's-
feel like you spend on doing it. Like if it comes to overtake any other form of excitement, if it's mostly bean counting, there will be. It depends on the player, but there'll be a point when they say, "Okay, enough."
It's a function of the game's design, is whether or not it's designed to handle stuff like that and interact. And again, this goes back to that question of complexity, whether these are interlocking moving parts or if these are just 3 additional barriers to you getting your next fight. Right?
Yeah, but sometimes, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but sometimes just having that barrier in there adds that sense of immersion. And I'm something that and I'm
No,
not saying
because a lot of
overly
players
dumb.
will just know, well, this is just a barrier to us getting to our next thing, which is why a lot of them throw it out. And at this point, here's the thing, if we know these are the qualifications, these are the specifications under which players engage with this content, and it does add something to the game, we could do away with everything else. We could do away with all the other shortcuts and stuff like that. We could just say,
I want to.
all right, these interactions, whether or not you have a caravan, whether or not a settlement has a level X blacksmith so that you can or cannot buy plate, whether or not what serves as adventure fodder or an asymmetrical challenge for the party to figure out, we could say that's good survival. And if the game doesn't have that, it's probably not meant for survival. It's probably not going to handle it terribly well. System does matter, and rules do matter in this context.
I agree.
Well, I want to interject a little bit because I feel that very often those mechanisms are thrown out because, like, say, in the moment, keeping track of encumbrance is very tedious, so people don't want to bother with it. But very often it has an effect over a longer period of time when you suddenly see that, like, a lot of those rules are there for a reason, and they do shape the game in a way that's more satisfying and interesting. So I think it's also a problem of like maybe seeking immediate gratification versus more.
I'm going to sell
Not
these
real-
8 suits of armor
again,
that I'm
you get
carrying
to
right
the
now.
same- in 5th edition, if you are encumbered, once you solve the encumbrance problem, you get to the same place based on how the game is structured.
I'm going to pick
where
up
you
all of the
ditch it.
orcs' weapons and sell them off for
Yes.
for a tenth of their value.
For
Yeah.
example, exactly, that's what people do. It's like,
how much
well, you need a donkey.
are
All
the
right, well,
bandits'
I buy a
clothes
donkey.
worth?
Now I've bought the donkey. Now we're going to forget about the fact I've bought the donkey so I could get to the thing. That's where it gets mixed in because it's not meant to handle that. I don't get, but if, for instance, I get a bonus for being light in sort of like a Dragon's Dogma style, I'm lightly encumbered, right? I'm faster on my feet. So maybe I have an additional, I get a bonus to something. I have no idea what
That
it might
was
be. It
that
might
was a
be an
big thing
initiative.
in the older games, right? Because you would, and then again, all of that disappears because in 5e you still use, I think, some sort of bastardized form of the challenge rating system, right? Or at least something analogous. But in the older games, you
Exists in
would
the
run
game,
into
I
like
don't know about you.
enemies that you could not fight or that were too strong. There would be moments when you would have to run away, and then suddenly how much encumbrance you were carrying, like it did play a role.
It slowed your
Right.
movement, that's for sure.
Yeah, if there's a chase mechanic in the game, say there's different types of combat. One is skirmish, one is ambush, one is chase, and we'll say, all right, well, the dragon comes out of the thing. It's not a question of whether the players are running away. You guys failed your wisdom saving throws against inspiring terror, frightful presence. Is the 5th edition's version, and now all of you are running away. And now we get to engage with a different kind of combat where you're not all like running along a grid or something like that. We say, all right, how are you going to escape this dragon? That's where encumbrance would be like, all right, anybody who is lightly encumbered, it gets a bonus to their checks and they get to be the first one up. Like that's their version of initiative. But that's not present in these games. And too often what you see is people just like throw in the mechanic and they expect it to change the entirety of the game. What they often find is it gets dismissed, sometimes unfairly. Sometimes unfairly. It would be cool if the donkey mattered, that we were using to carry all the orcs' weapons, right? That would be a fun gameplay scenario. There is adventure fodder in there, but it's so often just this, again, additional barrier. It doesn't have any real interlocking mechanisms with anything else that they're just going to ditch it.
I just want to make sure that we're not talking past each other for a moment, though, because you're hanging on to the 5e fruit right now, right? Just to keep everything on topic.
No, I'm using it as example.
Because in generally speaking, I couldn't disagree with you more. On 5e, if that is the rule, fine, you don't want to ham-fist it in. But a survival mechanic, I don't think I've ever played a game with a bad survival mechanic that was developed into the game. I saw different ways to work around it.
But that's extreme outlier because a lot of people throw. If you go out survey Twitter,
couldn't give a fuck what Twitter says. Oh, sorry, Aaron. Like I couldn't care what Twitter says.
Polling place,
no, because the question is whether or not people use these things.
They don't use them because they're lazy.
No.
That's actually what it is. They're lazy. They're straight up lazy. I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying that they're lazy, and gamers are by nature lazy. I've done it myself.
Short time preference, right? Immediate gratification versus
exactly.
a delay.
But they track things like hit points. They track spells. Sometimes you get them to track arrows and stuff like that. They're rather than just calling them lazy, you can figure out why other people will track certain things and not track other things.
Because the game masters don't make them. If you're at my table, you're tracking it.
Some things in the game. If there is a layer of commonality, a thread that you can pull and place into something else, then you could presumably get them to do it. And people
no, I can get them to do it because they're at my table. It's that simple. You're going to track this stuff. Like it's that easy.
No, I mean, there's probably also a different degree to which like these systems interact with like the player's actions, right? So if like again, if you don't track hit points, you notice pretty quickly if you just play anything that even vaguely resembles like what most of us consider D&D, you're going to run into like, oh, okay, wait a minute, we all have infinite hit points. Okay, it's very obvious when it goes wrong. And,
none of us seem to go down.
Yeah, but when we were, it's basically what we were saying, that a lot of these things like light sources or encumbrance or food, this is not stuff where if you eliminate it immediately, the game immediately falls apart. But in the long run, like it won't be as good or as complex.
Light sources are one that I see so many game masters hand wave, and it drives me crazy.
It's if I'm playing something like Lancer, my characters don't have to worry about food by and large, except in maybe rare circumstances, and that's going to be handled with a check.
Lancer's a sort of science fiction mecha RPG, right?
Right.
Yeah, I guess there it wouldn't really.
Hold on, you can have people starve in a. You have people facing environmental hazards.
People, sure. People
go
can
ahead,
starve in
watch
space.
Stargate SG-1. That's a feature. Environmental hazards are an extremely common feature. So again, this is where you take the design approach. I'm a designer. You're GM. You're GM. I'm pointing to Max and Prince respectively. Your solutions to this
have you just stripped Aaron of his DM privileges because he's going to
also
run
a player,
5e,
and he also does.
We're real DMs, and he's we should.
Well, he's the one that's trying to get the guidance. So there you go.
So it's where you take these things and evaluate how does the system impact these people, and you could say, well, 100% of my GMs are going to say at the table, we're tracking encumbrance because we can and I want you to, and we're not playing unless we do. Fantastic. I'm more interested in what makes people like tracking encumbrance as players. And that's where I come to solutions like, oh, well, if you're lightly encumbered, you get a counter that says, all right, well, I can now do these things faster, or I can expend this counter to get something done faster than most people are able to do. But if
you want to use the carrot and not the stick, basically.
What's up?
You want to use the carrot and not the stick, because normally encumbrance and light sources and what was that other one, food, right? Not tracking that's like pure like that's the stick basically. If you don't do that, the DM will make bad things happen. You're saying we should
the DM says you die
that
because you didn't do this.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm a good boy, if I pack all my lunch properly, if I bring enough torches, then like a fairy godmother will tap me lightly on the forehead and give me a +1 saving throw to a +1 bonus to saving throws for a day.
Well, no, it's just a function of the mechanics translating to the narrative. I'm more lightly encumbered. I can get around faster.
See, the thing is, I think we are actually talking past each other because I think we do agree. Because every time I hear you talk, I'm dead serious when I say this. Every time I hear you talk, I'm like, oh yeah, Forbidden Lands. Oh yeah, Forbidden Lands. Yeah, Forbidden Lands. And I don't even. That's not even my favorite game. But you're literally talking into it. The encumbrance system is easy. If your strength is 4, you can carry 8 items. That's it. You can just carry 8 items. Some items are heavy, which take up 2 slots. Some heavy. Some most are normal. Some are half. So you can put 2 on 1 slot. It's a very simplistic system meant
Absolutely.
to accommodate what you said. Arrows, food, and water are actually not even static numbers. They're dice rolls. So you start off with, say, I think it's D12, D10, I forget which one. If you roll a 1, all of a sudden it goes down to the next die. You roll a 1 again, it goes down to the next die. All of a sudden you're at a D6. I don't think it goes down to D4. If you roll a 1 on D6, you're out.
Right.
It tries
I remember that. I think we used similar mechanics for our treasury die.
So I think, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're actually talking basically the same thing. You're focusing a little more on the system. I'm talking in generalities and whatnot, but ultimately we all agree that the system needs to accommodate. You can't ham-fist it in, but it can have meaningful aspect.
Absolutely. No, I would say the system needs to, within the fantasy milieu, should accommodate it.
Okay.
And you should not ham-fist it. If you just popped it into 5e or you popped it into 4e, or I can't speak for 3rd edition. Maybe it's the same issue there. It would be related. It would just be a barrier to adventuring, and we look at you like, all right, what the fuck? Like, my character doesn't need to eat to survive in Divinity. If you suddenly added a like Divinity Original Sin, if you suddenly added a hunger bar to it, it wouldn't change the game. It would just be annoying, and I would occasionally lose hit points.
Yeah,
I could that it currently ties to within that system. That's when I say the rules matter, the system matters.
But there is a sort of I don't know, basic immersion to keep track of. I guess even if it's not a factor, you would just have it as a sort of footnote. You would have living expenses, basically, an abstracted
money
number,
sink.
so you can't. But and you wouldn't really take it that much farther. I can imagine in a game.
Yeah. Immersion would not be the right word for it. It would just be a feature. Yeah, a footnote.
Yeah.
It would be a feature of the game, and one that was ignored, and it didn't have any interlocking mechanisms. It didn't add to the complexity of the game. Again, that thing we went back to about a half hour ago. It would just be there, and if you had the option to ignore it, you probably would.
I'd say ultimate immersion is rolling to see if you have to take a dump.
Yes.
Yes.
We all saw that video.
Dedicated digestion systems in D&D. They're not. I want to play a game where if my mech pilot hasn't been eating properly, like his nutrition is down, like he doesn't perform as well. And what about his mental health? Okay. What about his emotional security?
That's pretty good. I like that.
Get a psychosis for sitting in your glitter boy too long.
It's like you made a 2-page long post on Facebook, about your personal status, but you only got 14 likes.
The tragedy.
No, that reminds me of Flying Circus. That has mechanics like that. You accumulate stress and eventually you vent, and stress inflicts penalties on you. And the way in which you vent impacts your mechanical progression. It also impacts your party relationships and your roleplay. That's it.
I like systems that do that build up the stress of characters. I don't know that game specifically, but like Alien, I keep quoting Free League games. What the hell? But it's got a simple stress mechanic.
Yep.
So
it's fun, again, when they're interlocking.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's all good. So Chris Black, he says, jokes aside, it makes me sad for real that somebody who played so many different RPGs and shows them off on the channel is now forced to go back to 5e. There really no better games. Well, so people that joined in the live stream a little bit late, you may not know that what I was saying is I'm not being forced to go to 5e. Basically, I mean, it just depends on kind of how you interpret it. But one of my absolute favorite players is back in the area, is wanting to play an in-person game. I haven't run an in-person game in forever. And that's just something that I know will fill up seats the fastest. And I kind of want to develop a new crew of players. And that's usually how you get people to start playing. And then I'm going to see if they can, develop interest for other things like my old crew did. So that's the thing. I wouldn't say I'm out. And there are definitely better games. You have to ask yourself what exactly is the outcome that you want. I'd say that 5e is the best game for just getting people at the table. And
Are you relativizing right now?
I am to a degree. There are bad games.
Well, it's not that bad in a way, Like,
it's.
Yeah. I think Mr. Scott. What was his name? Mr. Gary Scott. Mr. Scott. I think he got to you. I think
No.
He spread the word of Gary Gygax, and you have seen the word made manifest. You have seen the light.
Aaron says that he's been gone for so long because of work. His work is chiseling out that statue.
Yeah, exactly. He's already getting started on Mount Rushmore.
He's lifting up the parts of the bronze up to on the scaffolding.
He's been digging pit traps.
If I had my druthers and I was going to play a D&D-ish game, it's probably going to be either this one or it's way over there. I can't get it. Osric is the other one, which AD&D. So, yeah, that's probably what I do, or Swords and Wizardry. But getting people to try that it'd take a little bit of while. It'll take a little while. I've had a hard enough time trying to get people to play Lamentations locally. It's an unfortunate fact. People are playing 5e. Some of them, very few, are playing Call of Cthulhu around here. And that's really about it. That's about all the tabletop gaming I see. I found like one AD&D group in the whole geographic area. And I really want to run my own game. So that's my only thing there. Okay. But yeah, that's the whole thing. There are games that are better for me. Absolutely.
So how have we helped you want to run, or how to run this 5e game?
Well, so the whole thing about exploration, basically, I'm thinking in terms of how to enrich it without just be like not fighting against the system, basically, because I knew that the way that I handled it when I first started DMing, this is partially because this is how I saw it done, was basically fast travel for the most part. They're like, nobody cares about all that kind of stuff or whatever. It's kind of how the people were looking at it. And like, they didn't even know what to do because, that stuff is kind of in there in the DMG, but it's tiny. It's like less than a page. So because of that, it took me getting into the OSR to really develop all that stuff. Now that I have the tools and the procedures, I was thinking originally, I was like, I'm just going to port it over and just use all that stuff. But I'm not 100% now. Like, I'm not 100% exactly how I'm going to pull that off. There have been other things that have found good ways of handling it that players seem to appreciate, that won't be chewed up by the system. It won't have a million different cantrips and, first level spells and background things that just make all of it stupid and pointless. People have said very great things about the journeys and adventures of Middle Earth. And a lot of that, it kind of puts things in abstractions and dice rolls. And instead of doing like a whole day by day process, it's just like, what kind of events happen, and then how did you handle it, and what was the end result? So it gets them there. They still have some side effects. It's something for me to think about. I don't know.
Like Appendix N was saying, though, regarding the the system not supporting it, is it something that can be, and I'm actually asking from a place of ignorance, is it something that Appendix Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, there we go, can support without kind of breaking the game? Because people are expecting effectively fast travel and short rest constantly and so forth. I mean, how can you balance that without actually changing the game? Because it seems like it's not an easy thing just to say, I play it this way instead of that way, kind of like in the old days of house rules, because everything seems so dependent on the challenge rating and what they call it in 5e, action economy and so forth, all that kind of built in.
Well, the challenge rating, I'm just going to say...
Challenge rating is bullshit.
Yeah, I was just gonna say with the challenge rating, I'm just gonna like make it incredibly deadly regardless. I don't. The thing is that I'll build the world, and I'm gonna like if you go into a place full of orcs, then you're gonna encounter orcs, and this is how tough orcs are. And if you have,
I
if you're
charm 'em all.
unfortunate enough to encounter a whole lot of orcs, then that's what happens. If you encounter a few orcs, then we're gonna have a really quick fight, probably. Like I don't really care about challenge rating that much. When I first started DMing, I did like actually I used an app when I first started DMing that would calculate all that stuff for me, and it would actually have like it really easy to run all the combats and keep all their abilities together and track the initiative and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm just gonna create the world. And if they walk into a dragon's lair, then and they're only level 1, then they're probably screwed. Somebody's gonna die, probably. And that's all I am. As far as what was the other one?
It's the
essentially
rests,
that.
right? So
Oh,
the short and the long rests, but there's an optional variant, right, where you increase the resting time.
yeah.
But didn't you say that you were gonna play strictly Player's Handbook? And I'm not trying to be overly strict, but I mean, or are you gonna start adding in? Wow, I cannot talk. Some of this
Sneaking them
hardcore.
in.
Yeah, it's in the DMG, but I still
Oh, is it okay?
as an optional thing, but
Oh,
I still don't think I'm going to use it. I just think that I'm just going to use random encounter checks every.
Aaron, you could just sneak them in like session by session. Like it's shorter longer rests. Soon they'll have encumbrance and food. Soon their armor class will go down, and they'll have something called Thaco, and it won't make any sense.
Hey.
I think that one of the problems that a lot of people have is they don't track time in 5th edition anyway. So,
They must, like, for some reason, right? Like don't they have you don't like spells have durations? Doesn't their world have a holiday, or is it whenever the hell the DM says it's that day?
That's
when it matters
much.
for the story.
Whenever the DM says it is, and once you're out of combat,
Oh, no.
typically the spell duration doesn't matter nearly as much, unless it's like something that's supposed to last like an hour. But ultimately, usually it's just fiat. It's just like, well, it's been about an hour. It's been.
This is like how we played 2E in middle school. It really does feel like that.
That's my experience in every 5e game I've ever participated in as a player, and that was how I started when I first started running. That's how I was, because that's how I thought it was. Again, until I went OSR, then I'm like, oh, you can track it this way. They move this many feet. Then you've got this turns passed, and so you add enough of those turns. It's an hour, and keep my little dies on there. And
well, yeah, and I can imagine if you're not used to it, that like this timekeeping business sounds really annoying, and it comes across as tedious even for DMs. But again, if you do it for a while, I think you can inject a sort of you inject a type of like verisimilitude in your game. Like suddenly you can have like seasons changing, and if you're clever about it, you can probably find a way to have like this changing of the times, like affect the gameplay directly. You can have like seasons where I don't know, goods are cheaper or more expensive. Suddenly, like the various powers that be in your kingdom, they can operate over a fixed time scale instead of like low random whenever the DM wants. It gives so much more body to your game.
The king demands his taxes.
Yeah, exactly. It's that. Oh, by the way, no, that one, like whenever my players enter, are they stupid enough to enter yet another town with like giant cloth bags full of platinum pieces, then it always just happens to be tax collection time. It's the darndest thing. Sorry, guys.
Or bribery time.
Have you paid yet? Yeah. Do you
Wow,
have a
what a
receipt?
coincidence.
Oh, you must be adventurers. We don't allow your type in, but grease the palms a little bit.
Always, yeah.
Euron says, in my opinion, play games raw at the beginning if playing for experienced players. If running new players go nuts with house rules because there's no preconceptions. Maybe back in the day, bud, but nowadays you're gonna have people.
Crawford on Twitter said this. So therefore,
well, I mean,
it
not
has to be this
necessarily even
way.
sage advice, but like you'll have people that have read the book extensively, but they didn't feel like they were ready to get in a group yet because they'd never done it before. They didn't want to embarrass themselves or whatever. And then the moment that this Aaron guy says, "Hey, looking for beginners for a game," now they feel comfortable. Well, guess what? They have spent countless hours researching on, in the books on nerdarchy and all kinds of things, how everything's supposed to work. And then they get to your table and you're like, oh, I've got all these house rules. They're going to be pissed. There's a pretty decent amount. Now you could say, Aaron, just weed them out. That's fine.
Tell them their first problem was watching nerdarchy.
I kind of want to raise some babies. So what?
Tell them their first problem was watching nerdarchy.
Well, I used to watch it when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
They got so whenever they talk about like stuff that's more appropriate for, I don't know, GMs and kind of system agnostic stuff, I usually am a little bit more interested. Or
see that picture that's right next to you, that with the little circles that are bouncing back and forth right next to you there. Yeah, just picture me doing that right now.
No, but the question that other Aaron asks, the Relentless, I feel your own experience with the system should probably factor into that, right? Like if you've never really played 5e, but you've maybe read it, I would begin by running it by the book, and then seeing how that goes. And if there's various systems where you're like, okay, this is bullshit, I can't stand this or whatever, then you've got enough experience to fiddle around with it.
We have a suggestion for Electric Bastion Land. I heard that's a really good survival thing. And Indigo says it's overrated and not OSR. This is way behind. I got to try and catch up on all these.
As well, Ash earlier made a good comment about investment. How he said like people aren't going to be interested if you start changing up all the rules on something they just dropped a ton of money on, which, I mean, to be fair, is kind of their fault.
Yeah.
You're not even sure if you really want to play this game yet, and you're already, like, buying everything.
I had the pleasant enough experience that whenever I first played, like, my first group ever, the guy that was... it may not have been the guy that was running it, but it was one of the guys that was playing it. Basically printed out all of the basic rules in little binders and gave them to us. And then it was like, I don't know, I think after I read it and I was like, oh, that's cool, but I kind of want to see more. I bought the PHB on my own. Then I got the starter kit whenever I wanted to have a little bit more stuff as far as like, having a little tiny setting and some dice and all that. And it was only $15. And Minds of Phandelver is actually pretty good. But I never like went balls deep into buying a whole bunch of stuff for it. The most I ever did was eventually D&D Beyond had a sale on their digital books. And I bought a bunch of that just so I could build characters on there. And, you can also read the books on there as well. But
I've never bought a gaming book in my life. I let people tell me how to play.
Indigo says the only edition that makes fighters badass is 4th edition. I'd say...
Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
I wanted to hear it. Damn it.
Go for it.
No, I would say that's silly.
Well, but I know that. So Ash of Creativity, he dipped out a second ago, but he appreciates 4th edition, and I think it's probably for the same reason, because of how it like kind of puts them on par with your Magic users and stuff like that, and
gives them more mechanical complexity.
It's like somebody turned the Book of Weeaboo Fightin' Magic into like a sort of board game, but I don't know. Like the fighter is just a class with like superior hit points, the best attack bonus, and all the armor options. That was enough.
But there was also a role for fighters back then. The role of the fighter was to keep the wizard alive until he could start nuking everything, and then just keep everything off the wizard. That's your role. But everybody wants balance now. I want to be balanced. I should be able to do it.
You get what, one attack per against one attack per level against one hit dice creatures or less. That's pretty badass. It's one of the best rules.
Mm-hmm.
I especially like the rule that well, if you leave out paladins and thieves might break it, but I kind of liked the rule. I think it was in like way OD&D that said only fighters could use magic swords. And it's just like, and magic swords were of course
Wait,
Dabesh.
what was that in?
I think it was OD&D, like
Oh wow,
very like little brown books.
I like that
know
rule.
that Swords and Wizardry doesn't have that rule. So I mean,
But you would have only 3 classes in OD&D, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they didn't have a thief yet.
So yeah, it would make sense.
That does make sense. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So that it's a de facto situation. Yeah. But just that fact is, to me, that's really cool, especially whenever you make magic swords a big deal. I mean, some people might say, well, that makes it kind of annoying whenever every fighter they're all using swords, basically. It's like, I mean, if maybe you could care about that. I don't.
That's a lack of imagination on your part if you think that they're only using swords. How about try an axe, a ball peen hammer? You can go down. You don't even have to look at a list. Just think of anything medieval. Use all types of weaponry. Grab a club. They're pretty damn good with those too.
Well, I mean, as far as
if all the good magical shit is in the sword category, then then maybe people will start to favor them. But I guess you could make more.
I have a Vorpal club. It hits you and your brain explodes.
What else we got? Pete says exploration isn't a pillar in 5e, has been replaced with character build / progression. Yeah, it's kind of a joke of a pillar, honestly.
It depends on what you mean by exploration, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, so if you mean like moving from one place to another and having some kind of significance in how it plays out, that's pretty, because like as far as I can recall, the most that they have for exploration in the DMG is basically how travel like movement rates work in wilderness and in the dungeon, and that's it. You know, it's like, because they have to put that there because otherwise the only movement rates you have are combat. But as far as, how do you track time? How often do you check for encounters? How do you put together?
They don't do all that stuff.
Yeah, they're none of that's there. I think there are rules for getting lost. Yeah, there are rules for getting lost, but if you have a ranger, it's like it never happens. Which, I'm okay with that, I guess, but at least it makes the ranger a little bit better. But yeah, it's just incredibly anemic. So it's kind of a joke. Let's see.
Well, I don't know. I always associate exploration with also. I don't really see that many of them. Fortunately, in the OSR, you see it sometimes in people's adventures, but like natural hazards, right, that you have to overcome. So so walls that you have to climb, or crevices that you have to leap or somehow circumnavigate, and like these sort of natural obstacles, rivers that you have to ford. That's another great one too, or where parts of the caves or the dungeon are underwater. Like that's the good stuff. Like to me, that's an element of like this of exploration.
Agree 100%.
Yeah, and that's just something that in general is just on the DM to create. Really, it's not something that you can imbue as part of the system necessarily, other than just having, well, if they're going underwater, then this is how long it takes for them to drown.
I mean, I guess you could make a random dungeon generator and then just have like a trait where it's like underwater.
Yeah,
but in general, I agree with you. You should leave that up to like individual imagination and have a system that just has a minimum amount of rules in order for you to support that.
Yeah, they do have, just for anybody who's curious, in the DMG, they do have a random dungeon generator, and it's not awful. It's it's a random dungeon generator. It's
it's serviceable, but it's very bare bones.
It's your backup weapon, okay? If you're like, what, I have you wake up, you've got a hangover. You check your phone. You're like, oh shit, that's right. I've got my session planned in an hour. Okay, and you're like, ah, I've got nothing, and then you roll up your dungeon quickly, 30 minutes, go, and you say, a wizard made it, and then you roll a couple of rooms, you stock it, and then you go. Yeah, that's what it should do.
Pure, are you okay, bud?
Yes, I'm doing fine.
We're not.
I was
ignoring
trying to
you.
respectfully not
switching to 5e,
jump
Aaron.
in when they're going through this epic conversation between these three other guys.
You're basically me during the the Scott Garibay stream, I think it was, with Legion of Myth.
Right.
No, I interrupt a hell of a lot more than I do here. I just have to remember I'm on Aaron's channel. Keep my mouth shut.
What happens when you roll a 1 for needing to take a dump? I mean, if you have to ask, I mean, I imagine it's you're going to need a new pair of pants. If you don't have that, then you may.
You're going to need a new suit of armor. What are you talking about?
I'm going the opposite.
Yeah,
I'm going the
everyone
opposite
roll
route
a
with
saving
that.
throw within 20 feet.
It just doesn't come out. You're constipated.
Make a sanity roll.
You're in pain now.
My cleric had a serious case of feeble mind in 2nd edition and shit his pants and ruined his armor by extension. And the wizard was making a big deal about how I was running around, bare ass after that. It was good times. Good times. Let's see.
You guys are way too serious about cosplay elves.
Yeah, it was funny. I was just like, man, why are you so worried about it? And like I got some pants off of some dead hobgoblin or some crap, so he'd leave me alone.
That would smell the same as what you just let go.
Probably. K5K. He says, I have a 5e player in my 1e game. Apart from having to correct them about skills/feats not being a thing, they generally just roll the dice and tell them result. They're loving it. Yeah, I think a lot of it's just getting them to sit down. If you can get them to sit down and then like let them seriously give it a try rather than, oh my gosh, this is different, I don't like that, then I think that's because I've had people that weren't really sure sit down and play something and then they're like, oh, this is actually really cool. Like we did that. I did that with DCC. People were like, well, I don't know if I really want to play something. It's not 5e and all that kind of stuff. But then they started, rolling on their critical hits. They started rolling on their spells. They started having all these level 0 characters get, croaked real hardcore. And they're like, that was actually really cool. Like I'd play it again sometime.
Well, yeah, I think it's it really depends on what you want to get out of a game, and I would say this is a completely arbitrary number. 90% of most players, I think it's more or less the same. So if you run an exciting game in 1e or an exciting game in 5e, it doesn't really matter that much. But I think there are certain you can go into a game with like wanting to get the with the wrong notions of what like a role-playing game is or what it should be about. Or for example, if you're used to doing like Vampire the Masquerade and you're really like into the heavy role-playing stuff and you're used to being allowed to like to preen and prance, and then you make that switch to like somebody's D&D game, you do have that sort of culture shock where it's where it is in fact different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. Spider says skills have become powers in 5e. I have seen a lot of people treat them as such. Like insight is mind reading. What's another one? Persuasion is mind control.
I don't know. Has anyone ever had a decent experience with skills like that? I know Dark Heresy used it a lot, where you had another. I think it may have been called Insight or something like that, but where it's basically a lie detector. I mean, the most I would do is usually tell my players. I would be pretty ambiguous, but I would say, okay, this guy is hiding something. What you wouldn't be able to infer, like he's actually, I don't know, like an evil chaos cultist about to shoot you in the face or whatever. But still, it always does feel. It feels a little bit like cheating, because once you get those results back, you're 100% sure, right?
Yeah,
that something is going on.
Positive.
How do you handle that, Fiore? Sorry, we gotta drag him out a little bit.
I would say, I mean, I haven't really used these skills in a long time, just because I don't really like social skills anymore in a game, like being hard coded in. That's something that I feel like the players should have to, determine for themselves, because, like you said, it does become a lot more obvious what's going on if you use a skill, even if you're not like interpreting them like a superpower.
So how do you handle that when you have a character who in person has a low charisma, but the character is a bard or a high charisma cleric, paladin, whatever?
I'd basically say, if it's something like that situation, just tell me what your intentions are, I guess.
Okay. Because that's one of the things I've run into quite a bit, and it's like, how do you tell the little weakling Mortimer Snurd character that he can't play a fighter because he's weak, but you're telling me I can't play a bard because I don't know how to sing? That doesn't make sense. I'm like, fair point.
Yeah, I just say like, tell me what you're trying to do. Like, what's the intentions of your character, and then we can go from there.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's just like any other thing. I mean, whenever we're saying, well, I'm going to climb up that whole mountain or whatever, that whole 100 feet, with that check, it's like, well, you're not going to describe which footholds you're going to grab and all that kind of stuff. I can kind of see it, I definitely.
It's just like for many years, I admit that we played with charisma absolutely backward, because we'd say, okay, we'll play it out, let's see what happens. And then like Heathen Dogs even mentioned our stream a few times, he'll be like, oh, you did pretty well there, let me give you a +1 or +2. But again, you don't give that to the fighter or the smart character or player playing the mage, so on and so forth. So the way I've started running it is roll charisma first, and if you make it, all right, give me your best, but we're still going to go at the roll. And if you roll poorly, all right, what did you mess up, how'd you do this, And it actually has started to make the game more fun in that regard, and I never thought it would.
Interesting.
I always
as well, I feel like there's certain things that are a given. Like, let's say your character is like a wood elf or something, and there's like some point where you need to climb a tree. That's something that's probably that comes a bit more naturally to that character. That's not that might be something that you might not necessarily need to roll for.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Shouldn't roll unless there's a challenge. I'm sorry, go on.
No, your chat made a good point. They just said the reaction roll. That's kind of how I use that.
And reaction rolls, yeah.
And I try to it's a little hard to explain, but you just sort of you look at how well somebody is role playing relatively to their basic ability, right? And based on that, you give him some sort of modifier, or you decide like, oh, okay, this was actually pretty good for like what he's usually like.
Mm-hmm.
This would work, because you don't want to eliminate even bad role players. You don't want to eliminate role playing altogether. I think that's it's a little bit too much.
Absolutely agree with that.
Put them in the spotlight all the time, but you should incentivize them to role play without giving role playing XP, which is the worst thing ever.
Oh.
I think for one, I should specify like for 1E or BX D&D, I think role playing XP is very bad. Like for other games, it's fine.
Yeah, Fantaside says most newer D&D players think that anything that hinders getting to the main point is excess, when in fact it's the most interesting part most of the time. That's how it is for me. But there are people that I was playing with in 5e that, like, to them the most interesting thing was the plot twists and plot developments and things like that the DM was coming up with, and or like the dramatic moments between characters in the party and stuff like that. And then I'm just usually over there like, can we get to the dungeon?
Yeah,
can we?
Can we do that? I've got my flaming oil. I've got my 10-foot pole. Just let me
fuck off with your flaming oil, Fiore.
See, I'm in the middle of that. Like, I don't want a game of 8 hour just LARPing at the table, and I'm also not gonna role play every stupid shopkeeper that you go in and try to talk to and bribe and haggle with or whatever. Just roll your damn dice. But at the same time, I do like party role playing and role playing with what I would consider like the main NPCs that they deal with, instead of just like, yeah, this is what he says, whatever, move along.
Right. It's a matter of importance, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Right.
You're not going to have a long conversation with Joe Schmo, the fisherman down at the river.
Oh, I've seen him try.
Well, sometimes they think that if Joe Schmo can deliver some sort of rumor, and if you're quick on your feet as a DM, you might see some opportunity then like by all means let them. But I think it's very much it's a context thing, right? So you're
Yeah,
checking.
it's all
Okay, they've already been buying rope and arrows for like 2 hours. I should kind of encourage them a little bit, so maybe I won't do greetings to my inn. Like maybe I won't pull that one out. I'll just say, okay, the innkeeper says hi, you get standard rates, whatever.
Yeah, for me, whenever I'm a player, because I have to try and look through the mind of a player. Whenever I'm a player, I get frustrated if too much time is spent on really any kind of social interaction that doesn't build towards some kind of seed or quest or something for us to do. Like if it's too much just character expression, then it starts to feel
Yeah, I
masturbatory.
totally feel you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that.
Self-indulgence.
Yeah, and but that's what some people like. That's why I probably anytime that I do like a session 0, I'm going to ask people, how much are you interested in this component and this component and this component, and try and get that kind of stuff from them so that I can, we can come to kind of a consensus at the beginning. And if like there's somebody that's just a huge outlier, then they can just very politely go to a different game, and
It's nothing personal. It's just business.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's all about just trying to have a good time. And I've been the only person who's miserable in a game once. And, I just ended up leaving anyway. So I might as well solve the problem, before it happens. Some people will say that you should try and just balance everything. You can do that, but
sometimes it's a fool's errand.
Yeah,
Also, you should probably, I think, probably DMs do the best work when they run something that they're passionate about in a way that they find very engaging. And I think balance sort of, well, you should accommodate people a little bit, but ultimately they're there to like play in your game. And so you are there to entertain them, don't get me wrong. But the best way to do that is to run the game that you want to run. Like you want to run like your best possible game, the one that you're passionate about.
Your
right?
comment, by the way, is going to start a few fights on some Discords that I'm on. Thanks. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many Discords I've been on where it's like the game master's job is not to entertain. Like, okay, whatever.
What is his job then?
Arbiter rules. The players need to find their own fun.
An arbitrative, fantastical reality,
right?
In which the players, they are the characters.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
this is no mere game, entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think the game master's there to make the fun.
This is a fantastic adventure gaming.
Role-playing? We are exploring worlds.
No,
yeah, okay.
We're moving little minis on a thing. I chop it up, roll dice, give me my treasure. Next door, please.
Y'all are basically talking about my perspective, which is basically that one. That's like the only job I have to entertain you is really like, I don't know, to be a fair.
I don't disagree. It's just there's extremes to that argument as well.
Yeah.
I mean.
See, I find part of the fun. This is where you and I probably disagree, Aaron, because I don't think I've been blasted by you on this one, but I know some of the people that we share in common have gone after me for this one. One of my ways of saying what role-playing is, to explain it to new people, is it's acting without a script. Now, I don't mean LARPing or going into 9,000 different character voices and so forth unless you want to, but it is part of it. The scene is provided. How do you act? What does your character do during that scene? And I do like it when characters talk to each other as characters. And one of the things I encourage new players, as soon as they come to my table, is like, I tell Aaron that it's okay for him to grab that on my pack. Like, no, don't say it like that. Tell Aaron in character, or whatever Aaron's character's name in character, and just say it as if you're the character. And, once we break down that barrier, all of a sudden they start playing, they get involved in their characters more. I know that's not for everybody. And I also have the drama queens that come in and try to do 8-hour soliloquies about, Macbeth or some crap. It's like, no, we're not doing that here either. You don't get to talk to every NPC in my city because I literally don't know who they are.
Yeah.
I only have prepared 10 randomly generated names for tonight.
Right.
And then, yeah, that's how you always get like, this is Felgor, the barkeeper, where you have to like make something up at the drop of a hat. It's
And
always
I'm
like,
horrible at that.
Yeah, it's always so much worse than what you would have come up with in advance.
Yep. I'm Galstaff. Oh, sorry.
It's all good. This is a pretty good comment because this is something I need to think about. Fantaside added to his string of comments saying wandering monsters also pose a problem in that they add more combat, which in newer editions takes much more time. It seems like wasted time to them. That is true. I can run a combat in Old School Essentials or Swords and Wizardry in like 5 minutes pretty easily. When it comes to 5th edition, if it's 5 minutes, that's because like the first thing that happened was a gigantic spell that just blasted everything typically. And a lot of that also depends on how complex your characters are in the game and like what levels you're dealing with.
Does
Higher
5e
level,
give out experience
more-
for combat? Because like in the older school games, you wanted those combats so that by the time you got to your next location, you were closer to another level or maybe even got a level.
Here's the problem. It's written that way. There are XP values for monsters, but almost everybody I know uses milestone.
I hate those people. I hate all you people who use milestones. I'm telling this on Aaron's chat. If you use milestones, just write it down. Max Liao hates you. You're a bad person and you should feel bad. Go play in traffic. I'm done now.
Don't go play in traffic. I have a moral responsibility. About the we already covered the 2d6 reaction roll.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good. But I would just say definitely I do use that. Like they'll give their spiel. I've probably already done a reaction roll to see what the general overview or like feeling was going to be to begin with, and then after they give their spiel, I'll do a reaction roll and like adjust based on how amenable they should be to that agreement in particular. So like if it's a really good plan that benefits both parties and all that kind of stuff, and they're kind of good on it, then I'll roll it. And if for some reason it's snake eyes on the dice and so they end up with like a 5 or something, then there's probably something there that there's something about it that they didn't know that's actually going to be an issue that I need to delve into.
So why aren't you guys playing Forbidden Land? Everything that you guys talk about tells me you want to play Forbidden Lands.
All right, noted. No, I was gonna.
I haven't bought it yet.
I'll check out.
Same thing as Aaron.
I have so many that I need to get through first.
I always thought that was one of the interesting parts about DMing is that you do have to be a little bit quick on your feet because, like, say a situation occurs such as the one that Aaron describes. It's like your players, they're role playing it out of the park. They've got like the best possible plan. They got it lined up and they deliver it, to the NPCs with a silver ribbon around it. But you roll snake eyes, right? That's awesome because now you have to like figure out a way where like that incredibly convincing speech was like total bullshit or they're not buying it in a way that's not totally lame. That's part of the fun. Yep.
I agree. Alex says, I don't see what the point in splitting social skills into 4 different skills. The 5E DMG says the players should describe what they do. The DM to determine if a role is needed, one ability skill is needed. That's one of the things that I use to disarm people that would complain about how somebody would roll a nat 20 on something that should have been impossible. And I would say you shouldn't have let them roll in the first place.
Yep.
Bingo. So yeah, that's true. Bounded Accuracy says social skills are there for the same reason combat skills are. Yeah, I could do without one, and I couldn't really do without the other so much.
Yeah, we don't really have a way of like simulating social interaction we don't really have a way of simulating combat between two parties in a way that we can simulate social interaction between two parties, right? Like we can pretend to be whatever an imaginary character and try to convince each other, but it's probably not a good idea to like fight each other IRL or whatever, like do wrestling. So like we can very easily replicate one, we can't really do the other.
Well, what if your room's big enough? Just put a mat on the floor and see who wins. Somebody dress up as the orc, start swinging. Come on, didn't you as a kid roll up newspapers and start beating each other with them? That's how you do
I
it.
can just imagine like you're covered in bruises. Oh Jesus, another wandering encounter. Yup.
And now when those bruises go away, that's when you're healed.
Yeah, the DM puts on his orc costume again, grabs his
Hardcore
hat.
LARPing.
There you go, right? Oh, Aaron's looking concerned.
No, I'm just trying to. So some of the comments I wasn't really able to understand exactly what they were saying. Oh, this is okay. I was trying to figure out what Lynchpin was talking about. He's talking about the OSE game I ran. He was, but this was so long ago. I can't remember exactly what the context was in the stream whenever he mentioned it. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that game though. Some people were saying it felt kind of Lovecraftian what was going on in there. K5K says regarding running a game, I'm an entertainer or more like a host. I provide a fun environment for players or characters to roam around in and find their own entertainment. That I feel like that's true. I think you do have to have seeds there, like for them to pick up on, rather than it just be the pure sandbox that sometimes people refer to whenever they say, that it just sounds boring because you've got nothing to do. You got to have something. And that's what rumors are for. Like get a rumors table, build in some NPCs with problems and secrets and bad thoughts.
Well, I think the question is ultimately one. It doesn't it's about what you prioritize, right? Like, so what your highest goal is, and like ultimately you are there to have an entertaining evening and play a quote unquote fun game, okay? But how you go about that is like everybody has different strategies, right? So you have people that run it really fast and loose, or you have people that, as you say, they create this incredibly complex, nuanced, detailed game world. Whatever works for you particularly is fine, but as long as you don't forget that ultimately you are like creating an experience that is meant to be enjoyed by your players.
I think that they're there because I'm holding a gun to their head.
Also,
I've seen it.
No.
I've seen it. He accidentally let it slip on a stream one time.
If I wasn't already going to be demonetized on this one, there it was. Spotlight hogging as the enemy shared that love around. Pete says thinking about time been removed as a resource that players have to deal with. Yeah, like introducing time timekeeping is really going to matter a lot because whenever I first started, I used fiat a lot of times because I didn't know anything else. I would say, well, that'd take probably about this long, I guess, but I didn't really have a metric for it. So like they would cross through an entire dungeon in the darkness very quickly, and it's like it's been maybe 30 minutes, a pretty good sized dungeon or whatever. But nowadays when I run it with the old school stuff, it's like, yeah, it took them like 6 hours, and that's if they didn't have to leave and come back and leave and come back and leave and come back.
Right.
Florence, it was good to see you, bud. He played the Bard in our second edition game. Still plays. He says, personally, I just give out EXP every time the party clears a dungeon. It saves me a lot of effort in the long run.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm done.
I was just going to say, I like it because I don't want combat to be the way you get XP.
Right. That's I think most people
it's
complain
defeating
about
monsters. Sorry for interrupting there.
Well, yeah, defeating monsters. But even if you're clearing a dungeon, you can clear a dungeon without killing everything.
As long as you encounter it, if you make a strategy even to run away, maybe you don't get full XP for it, then that's one of the things that I think the older editions of D&D did well. You got the encounter XP, but you also got damage XP if you were a fighter, or loot XP if you're a thief, and whatever the wizards got for casting their spells. So you still got some XP for engaging the encounter and saying, nope, shutting the door and running off, as long as you encountered it. So I definitely don't agree with the whole dungeon clearing milestone nonsense because it's built into the game. Now, caveat being, I think 5th edition does this. I can't remember. But if everybody's XP is the same, then fine. milestone that nonsense. But when you have thieves that need to level faster, otherwise they will die to the traps. You want your thief at 3rd, 4th level when you're 1st, 2nd level. It's just, you want that. And you have to protect the wizard because he's only got 1 or 2 spells. Now, the XP system is by far the right way to do it, or some balance of that, so that they can actually progress at the speed that they're supposed to progress.
They fucked it in 5e.
Right, yeah, that's what I was saying.
It's also bad because it doesn't like in this way it's binary. Like you clear the dungeon. In a lot of the older dungeons, you would have secret doors that would very often, or secret rooms that would very often have a fuck ton of treasure. Or like say there would be difficult monsters that you could choose to avoid. But like if you were particularly clever or lucky, you would still be able to kill them, right? So all that. All that nuance, right? All these gradations are lost, and you just earn the XP. And I think that's you should be rewarded for playing well, and well, not penalized, but yeah, you should. Yeah, actually, you should be punished for playing poorly, or at least timidly. And like you lose a lot of that with this method. But it is quicker. I'll give you that one. It does save effort.
Yeah, I came to appreciate XP tracking a lot more in the old school stuff because your classes were different. They were a lot more. They leveled up at different rates. They had, for instance, you were talking about the thief being very fragile with that good old D4 hit die in BX, and then was it a D6 in
D6 and AD&D?
But in 5e they get a D8. They level at the same rate as everybody else. They're also very capable damage dealers. Whereas you get that double damage, I guess, with a backstab, but the backstab is harder to line up than the sneak attack. The sneak attack you can just line up just by somebody standing there and fighting the thing, and you popping an arrow at them or something, and you can do that all combat basically.
I have a question for Legion of Myth, actually. How do you do that, the backstab stuff? Because what Aaron describes is how I've seen most DMs do it, but I've also heard certain seasoned AD&D DMs say basically like, well, if you like basically if the thief isn't getting off like at least one backstab every other fight, then the DM is being too stringent.
How are they gonna make that percentage? They got to do like hiding shadows and shit, right?
I didn't hear everything that was said because I was responding to chat. I'm sorry, but generally speaking, what you said is, first of all, I'm kind of a dick to the thieves on that one. Like if you're not already hiding and you guys bust into a room, you don't get to hide in shadows after the fact. It's not a magical ability. So good luck trying to get that backstab. But if you're in position to do so, like as in the fighter breaks down the door, the combat started, they turn the monster away from the door, something like that. Oh yeah, have at it. Do your backstab.
Or if you can walk around, walk around the melee or whatever. Yeah.
If it's a big enough room, you could do that. Yeah, but you don't just because by nature of being in the room, you don't just get a backstab. But I was behind it.
No. No, you do. You would have to maneuver and everything, but I've also heard like the really rigid interpretation is okay. You gotta hide in shadows, whereas like say other people might say like okay, like this is it's a pitched battle or a skirmish. There's lots of noises.
All
lots
contextual
of
for me. Depends what is going on. I can't give you one decision because I try to envision it and let the player talk me into it or out of it based on what is happening at that time. There just isn't one set rule, but ultimately, if you think you're going to be in a well-lit small 10 by 10 room or some nonsense like that and just backstab somebody, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, okay, not in the village square.
Right.
Daylight. Gotcha.
Well, I mean, I might allow it if they're not paying attention. You won't get away with it probably.
To backstab if you do it with surprise.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's another thing. I was going to say that those percentages for hide in shadows and moving silently at early levels are garbage, but you do have 2 in 6 chance of surprising them. So if they're surprised, you'll at least get one off.
That's only if the rest of the party isn't there, wearing like plate mail or carrying torches.
Fair. One of the things I have allowed a thief to do is if the thief is like, look, this is just going to get me killed if I try to do this fight, is to go somewhere else. I might let the monster, and I should say I have in the past let the monster, creature, person, whatever, lose interest or forget it exists, and then maybe let the thief sneak in that way. But again, it's all based on positioning and context and how the players are playing. I don't do it to screw over the thief, because I get it that, the thief has a hard time with that, but I also see the thief's role as something else. How about this? Well, they're fighting it, you go steal the stuff, so in case you guys start to lose, you can just still bail out of there and come out with some of the treasure.
K5K says, oh, sorry. Did you have something?
No, I'm good.
Okay. K5K says, every fight is an experience. Every victory earns XP right there, right now. You can then go away and train up if you need, rather than waiting until some arbitrary mission ends.
Agree with that completely.
Yeah, I do too. At the same time, when we're playing DCC, a lot of times, it's per encounter difficulty, and like I tally it up at the end of the session and stuff like that, and I'm fine with that as well. It just depends on what you're playing, but for D&D, this is what I like.
Well, there is something charming about having when you're exploring a dungeon. Again, a lot of really good ones do have like the big smackdown at the end. It's sort of a classic, but it's also kind of liberating to just have this huge place to explore with. Well, they might have different groups of monsters, but it doesn't really have a definite beginning or an end. And at some point you can just decide to call it quits.
You just reminded me of something that I had completely forgotten until now. This was a long time ago, but in a D&D game that I ran, I remember that the thief, they were running in. I forget what they were fighting. I think it was a couple of minotaurs, but the thief climbed up, what do you call it? A column, and hung up there for a while. His intent was to go up there to see if a couple of the gems they needed to pry from the top, get him some money was there. But when he's up there, he realized that he had a really great attack on these minotaurs. So he climbed partway down, waited. It was still shadows up there because there are only torches on the ground. And I gave him his backstab attack, and the dude rolled a crit. So yeah, I basically, yep, okay, you fall down off your column, you stab it in the head. Good job. Better than that, but you know what I'm saying. So I mean, again, contextually.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that for thieves, I think it's in Rules Cyclopedia. I may have misremembered, but there was at least one edition of OSR D&D had the where removing a roll. You had the remove trap skill, and if you didn't make it, the trap would go off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's common to every edition of D&D, but I always thought that rule was like very brutal, especially at earlier levels.
I've always done that as fumbles. I don't know if that's a house rule or if that's in the game, but if you fumble your remove trap roll, your disarm trap roll, if you fumble it, then that sets off the trap on you.
Yeah, I don't think we use. I don't think they use fumbles, but I would have to look it up again. It's been a while since we encountered a trap in my game.
Yeah, I'd probably put a threshold. If they fail it by more than 15% or something like that, then maybe there's a 1 in 6 chance. I don't know. I
just treated it like a D20 since you're, again, second edition, you roll percentile dice, so 95 and above.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, like something like that totally makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. Let's say Daniel says I also. Oh, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna make a snide comment. Go ahead.
Let's hear the comment. Damn it.
I probably broke the brains of all the people who play BX in first edition with their D6s and all that nonsense. Because second edition, I think actually first edition uses percentile also. I forget, but
so
yeah.
Does BX?
Oh, does it? I thought that used I thought they used like a D12 or something.
BX, yeah.
Okay.
Lamentations
no.
uses a D6.
No, sir.
And
then I'm
Basic
mistaken.
Fantasy uses a D20. No. Basic Fantasy uses a percentile as well.
I'm literally sitting here with the Beckme book next to me. Let me see what that one says.
Well, I don't know what Frank Minster put in there.
The hear noise is D6 based.
Okay.
Oh, hear noises. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Daniel says, I also run and play 5e, but I do like OSR style GMing and incorporate it into my games, hence why I'm here. Maybe you can give me some tips then. Let's see. Pete says, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma rolls should be rolled by the DM in 5e. I like that quite a bit. There are a lot of things that I think should be DM side rolls.
Oh, yeah.
That aren't. but it just kind of depends. You can always tell them that they have to commit to whatever course of action led to the roll, but I don't know. I just like for them to be surprised. But it's also easier for me when I do that online because I like to roll. Like I can roll in the private channel, and if they say BS, I bet you rolled, like poorly or you rolled really well for me, whatever. Then I can just take a screenshot of whenever I had the roll and what the result was. But
no, you say I'm the GM, biat, like I'm the juggernaut, right? Okay, do you mind if I answer a chat real quick?
Go ahead.
So David Babbitt, yes, I do run mostly Theater of the Mind. I do use minis, but I use them in the abstract manner where it's like, okay, this is your relative position in the room, et cetera, et cetera. I don't use them as dumb squares like 3rd edition and 5-foot rule reaches and all that other nonsense that doesn't belong in Dungeons & Dragons. I'll sit down and I'll do a lot of role playing. The problem is the modern gamer doesn't want that. And I've learned that I get more complaints like, dude, we had a 4-hour session and 2 of it was just role playing and talking back and forth. So I've just kind of learned that people don't want that, and I'll cater to that. So I mean, we don't have 10-hour sessions anymore. So I hope that clarifies it. I'm not arguing with you or anything. Just I hope that clarifies.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't comment on that stuff generally. Let's see. I don't cover Theater of the Mind role play. I think I've talked about, like, as far as handling combat in Theater of the Mind and stuff. I think I've probably mentioned a few things, but as far as role playing, and I assume you mean social encounters and stuff like that and all that. I just don't feel like I have anything interesting to say on it, honestly. Other than just like I said, like how I tend to handle. With reaction rolls and it doesn't take very long. Some people will do the channels where they're talking about how to make your character interesting and how to do all that kind of stuff. And I think that those are people that you should go to for that kind of stuff. For me, like I really enjoy pretty basic ass characters. Like my last 5e character was just a what was he? An evocation wizard. And then I think my character before that was just like a champion fighter. And, my wizard was just a guy that wanted to get a whole lot of magic and, just be really powerful. And he was kind of a dick. And I don't know. I don't feel like I have anything too great to contribute to that. But my friends, they tend to appreciate whenever I am a player, because actually, like last Wednesday, I played in a 5e game with them. Like they let me join whenever I feel like it, usually, and they like my quips and stuff like that. And they'll actually ask me for them occasionally, because I'll have my asshole wizard say something assholey, and they like it. But yeah, I mean, I just don't have too terribly much to say on the whole thing. I think that if it's completely absent, then there's something kind of missing, but at the same time, when I did my public OSE games, the player characters, they didn't have a whole lot to say most of the time because, you encounter some goblins or something like that. And, a lot of times you don't speak their language because, I was
comprehend language. There you go. Stop complaining about it. Put it in your spell book.
Yeah.
Hey, at least you actually have to spend something there in like OSE and stuff. Whereas, it doesn't really feel like you're spending anything in 5e. It's just like, oh, it's just.
Is it a cantrip there, or does just everybody speak every language?
There are a lot of language. People get a lot of languages fairly.
People get a lot of languages, and as well, it's only like a single. I can't remember exactly what level it is because it's been a while since I played that edition, but it's not very high up spell slot requirement.
Comprehend language is level 1, right? I'm trying. Yeah. No, wait. This will probably depend on the edition, but comprehend language is. It's not. I know it's not in Rules Cyclopedia. Read languages is, but comprehend languages is not.
That may be a second edition thing.
Maybe
it could be a first edition thing because there are some subtle differences between BX and BECME and AD&D as far as that stuff goes. I mean, like for instance, the cleric level thing. As far as when they get spells.
Oh yeah.
I can't speak to first edition because I don't know it all that well compared to second edition. I know it's in second edition. But to piggyback on what Aaron was saying, the reason I don't make videos about that is because I'm not a voice actor. I'm definitely bad at improv. I can think well enough on my mind because I've thought about the adventure well enough where it's like if things go, sidebar on the adventure, I'm usually pretty good about that. But I'm, sometimes I'll throw a voice out there. Sometimes I'll try to, intone something the way I think the character would. But all told, I'm probably the last person you'd want to hear about that. Unless you want to hear about somebody being really angry. I can do that pretty well.
Wouldn't going into like in-depth role-playing just be basically what's the difference between that and a video about just acting? I feel there's so much like, nuance in there too, and there's so much material, and it's a relatively, it is a part of the game. Don't get me wrong, right? But at the same time, like you can go so deep into that. Can't you just?
And imagine all the critics out there.
Acting? Oh yeah.
There are some pretty interesting videos that will cover like these kind of character archetypes tend to work well in a party dynamic or like with this kind of class or something. Those I think could be pretty useful for people, but I'm not saying that the acting ones aren't useful, but that to me is probably the better area.
I'm very curious whether that is true, because I think, I don't know, we may have talked about it once off stream, but it's my theory that sooner or later everybody needs to sort of who plays D&D sort of reaches maturity when he realizes that not playing a dick in the game is not going to make a dick player less of a dick. So that like at some point, the real, the overriding social mechanics and social dynamics will always reassert themselves. So I'm a little skeptical about this idea that like playing certain archetypes in a group will make a huge difference. I feel
just for entertainment
probably
purposes,
balance out.
And for entertainment purposes, and to alleviate the whole, my character is a lone wolf kind of character. And then them
five grim and brooding, loners. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. That whole thing. The player, they also have a lot of those. These are the different player types, and like the different kind of problem players and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's interesting stuff. I used to watch for that purpose. What are they called? WebDM. WebDM does some stuff like that, or used to. Matt Colville did some of that stuff, and I think it's how to be a great GM is another one, and he's interesting because he I disagree with almost everything he says about running a game, but he has some really interesting stuff to say still. Like for instance, to him he's like, it has as many hit points as it needs until I want it dead, basically. That whole argument.
Sucks.
Yeah.
Well, but let's be fair, he's way more, I mean, even though he does a really good job of world building, he's also heavily into the story gaming aspect, even if he doesn't use the term.
Yeah. Well, he'll use a term. He'll use a term. He's like, D&D is okay for that. And I'm just like,
he's the one that I had on one of my original videos. Really bad audio quality. Don't go look it up. But when I talk about speciesism and whatnot, because he's the one that said, "What if an orc in Mordor wants to build a vineyard?" And I'm like, "You're an idiot." like that, or you got 10,000, 100,000, 300 million other orcs around you that disagree with you. Do you think that orc is going to survive because it's scratching its head going, "Hey guys, let's go make wine"? No, that orc's dead.
Doesn't look like they're going to grow much in Mordor anyway.
Yeah, right.
Maybe we just haven't seen all the nice parts that are like beyond Mount Doom.
That's true.
I'm just like imagining like an orc with a silver platter. "Meat's back on the menu, boys."
Lord of the Rings is just Gondor propaganda, and so they're only showing just that little section. They're showing like our Chicago or something.
Just
fake news, man. Fake news.
Yeah, the rest is just like is a verdant paradise.
Yep. Neat says, "If you don't host a mini armored combat league for fights in D&D, I can't respect you as a DM." I used to do the whole, like, I had a dry erase board like grid and like I could do like little maps or whatever. I used to do the minis and all that kind of stuff. It slowed things down drastically, but since then, like, I might just do like a little sketch if they just can't picture it or whatever, but I usually try and get them to, for the most part, stick to theater of the mind.
I'd like to ask another question out of ignorance for you, since you've done 5th edition.
Yep.
One of my problems with 3rd and definitely 4th is the reliance on battle maps, because one thing I can't stand is, and I ask this question to everybody, if you go to a professional baseball player, take them off the baseball field, just throw them in your backyard and say, I want you to throw this ball exactly 120 feet. How many times do you think he's going to hit exactly 120 feet without some sort of marker? So how does that wizard throw that spell out there and say, I want it right here so that's 5 inches away from my buddy, but gets the guy that he's fighting? No. And
Yeah.
I hated that about 3rd edition.
They still do it. People still do it.
No, you don't. Everybody's rolling a save.
all you can really do is, as the DM, just say you really wouldn't be able to tell that much. For me, like, my thing is, I don't worry that much about that much, like 5 feet. I don't worry about 5 feet that much. Like if it's that, if they're off by that much, I'm not really that worried about it. If they say I want to only be able to hit this and not them, then I may have them roll like a D6 or something, and then just say you got like a 2 in 6 chance or something.
Okay.
I'm
just curious if 5th edition still did that, because that's one of those things that just drives me crazy when people are like, I'm exactly 7 squares away. This thing only goes 6, so I'm fine. Like, oh, but you missed through it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that 5e really does anything that that's any like worse than BX in that capacity, as far as having the feed in there and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of it's just the play culture. A lot of people they just kind of expect that that's going to be a thing, and that if they are, if they move 5 feet too much, or they well, I mean, if their thing is going to fall 5 feet short or something like that, then I just can't do it at all, or whatever. That tends to be a thing.
Okay.
So you just have to train them. Like, talk more in terms of zones instead of feet, if possible.
So not no pixel bitching, basically, right? Where
Basically that.
Okay, yeah. No, I guess I agree, but I also don't want to be too inflexible. I guess there should be a reasonable distance.
Yeah, there should be wiggle room, I think.
Yeah, but yeah, it shouldn't be that, like, okay, whatever, I threw this 60 feet radius fireball, and since I'm 61 feet away, like, I'm sorry, you're not hitting me. So yeah, I get what you guys are saying.
One of the rules I saw that I thought was neat, haven't tried it myself yet, was one game I said, that's fine, you're good enough, you're supposed to be a master at your profession, that's fine. However, again, you can't pixel judge that, like you said, to that degree. So the enemies are going to roll save for either full damage or half. You're going to save for half or none. I was like, that's kind of a neat way of doing it.
If you're on the borders, I can see that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think maybe I'm just a pushover.
Well, sometimes there's something to be said about letting the heroes be the hero of the story. For me, it's specifically when characters like, oh yeah, if I'm in this square, I can be hit. So let me back up 2 steps. Like, how would you know that? How would you be able to look at that without some sort of marking on the wall to say, this is 5 feet? How would you actually be able to know, like, I'm in range? You can judge it. We can eyeball things in life. We have brains, but without some sort of marking or range. Hell, in the military, we used range finders. We had for line of sight and for zones of fire and so forth. It's like we knew that tree was 200 meters away, so we had a range. I forget what it's called. We had a grid on there that said that tree is 200 meters away. Outside of that, we wouldn't have known. Like, I don't know, 170, 200, but that's a pretty big area if you're considering throwing a fireball that might hit somebody or might not hit anybody.
Well, I mean, at the same time, though, if you've cast your fireball 40 times, right, you must have a pretty good. I imagine if you're still alive, right, you must have a pretty good, like, intuitive sense of, like, where to place it. So
No, I agree with that, except for the 5 foot rule. Like, outside of 5 feet, I'll get with you on that. But I'm talking like the ones, there are 2 characters, they're standing technically. I'm in this square, and I shouldn't say me. Aaron's in one square, the monster's in the other square. I want to hit the monster, but not Aaron, so I know to drop it literally right there. Aaron's perfectly fine.
I'll shoot it all the way over them and just hit them with the blast radius, and Aaron will not be harmed. Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And a lot of people actually treat fireballs and stuff like that like they aren't projectiles. That like you couldn't Like if you, like basically, you can just shoot it in the middle of a whole bunch of people, and then it'll only detonate at the right spot that you want it, basically. And so that's one of the things that I'll probably fight back on. I'll just be like, dude, there's
Does it go in an arc? Can I arc my fireballs in your 5e campaign?
I don't know. Maybe if you do spend some time training and doing something special, because I don't have a problem with supplementary things that you accomplish by interacting with the world and stuff like that, which probably will offend people. But as long as I'll just try and keep that from interrupting with or interfering with other class abilities and subclass abilities and stuff like that. Undermining. That's the only thing. That's the only thing that I hate about it. That's why I kind of prefer things to be lighter, is because then I can add that kind of stuff in where,
it's easier to
arc your shit.
add than to take away.
Yeah. You can definitely learn to arc your shit if you take the time to do it. But then it's like, well, but does that encroach upon the evocation wizard that gets to choose not to hit one target, or that kind of thing?
Probably not, because that evocation wizard can dump that can literally walk into a crowd and then like dunk a fireball just like at his feet and incinerate everyone around him.
Fair enough.
Which would be awesome.
Somebody said it's
Wizards
a game.
Will never be fallen.
It's a game, but it's a role-playing game. It has to be grounded in some sort of fantastic reality in my mind. That's why I'm a theater of the mind player. I'm not talking like, I know Grim likes to use the word hyper-realism. I don't like it because hyper means it's, excessively so. No, because it's a fantasy type of realism, though. I don't see it as just a board game of squares. I see it as a role-playing game of characters and people and worlds.
Yeah, the squares and the rules are there to help you simulate something, but it's not. The world is not there to like. To simulate the they're not like trappings to simulate the rules, right? It's more that like these rules are abstractions that you make so your virtual world runs properly
and
but
consistently.
The actual virtual world is much deeper than those rules, basically.
Agreed. Yep.
All right.
Could you grab a fireball projectile out of the air and smother it with your body as a sacrifice? Sorry, I'm reading the chat.
Yeah, that's what I was laughing at earlier. Was not that comment, but a comment. I wasn't laughing at you, Aaron, but like there's somebody said something about fireballs. I forget now, but I laughed.
Let me try and catch up on comments, and we're probably gonna wind down, and we'll just like y'all can just talk about stuff that you've got coming out or what you got going on. Alex says, I think D20 systems work well when you don't spam rolls. I find when I play 5e, the DMs make me roll stealth checks every few feet, so I eventually fail a roll. Yeah, I do like how in I can't remember which one. I think it's OSE. You roll a climb sheer surfaces, and it goes up to 100 feet, and so it's kind of spelled out there, but. And sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. I like it in that case because it's nice guidance. But I would say that if they're stacking, my big thing is whenever they stack saves, like, oh, you failed that save, but I want to give you another chance. Here's another save, or whenever
just say I made it, dang it.
Yeah, basically. Or whenever it's like, okay, I'm doing my lockpick check, I failed. Oh no. Well, we're not tracking time and you're not checking for encounters, so I'm going to try again. Where's really, you're going to get it eventually, unless it's, the probabilities say it's absolutely impossible for you to hit that difficulty class.
The take 20 rule in 3.5, I think, was specifically for those situations where if you have ample time, you could take. I think you could literally take 20 times as long as a normal skill use, and then you could get an automatic 20 on your roll.
That's a long time.
It wouldn't work for all skills, by the way, but like for some.
20 times so that would be like 3 hours.
20 minutes to pick a lock.
20 minutes? You saying it takes 1 minute to pick a lock?
I think so. Maybe 10. I haven't played D20 that often. I don't know.
I just abstract. I just round it to a turn when they.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure if they did that, but
I don't think
the idea was kind of sound.
Yeah.
It wouldn't really work with social skills, I guess.
Yeah, I think that if with enough time given, a lot of times I just kind of like have any set thing. I'm just like, if you're taking a lot of time, then it's probably going to be a lot easier. So you get a bonus, basically.
Yeah, if there's no immediate pressure, or if there's no, again, wandering monsters or what have you, then yeah, sure, I can see that. But I was going to interject that I've had this too. I played 5e as a player, and the DM would constantly make us roll perception checks to see something that if we would have missed it, we would have discovered it approximately 1 minute later anyway, by just like walking into the room. So I do see a lot of that in novice DMs, but it's pretty easy to correct.
So I'm glad you said that, because I've been getting a little turned off about by reading some of these newer games where it says, okay, if the roll isn't meaningful, don't have them roll for anything. And I keep thinking, duh. But if you're running into those situations, okay, well, that explains. Then that rule does need to be in a book. So, if there isn't any meaningful consequence from it, if there isn't something that's going to happen, either a time crunch under duress or something that says if you failed, this could go south for you, just don't roll. I didn't even realize that was a thing that Dungeon Masters did. Maybe I was trained by some good ones, thank God. But you educated me right there. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. We're all about education on this this channel. No, I keep thinking back to, or you would get these ridiculous situations, right, where somebody wants to get, I don't know, directions to a building in the city, right, a public building. And if you make him roll for that, and what if you roll a 1? What he tells you to go fuck yourself, right?
Let's walk to the next city.
Yeah, I think. Well, or do you fail so spectacularly that like the entire city now refuses to help you because you broke some sort of?
The guy sends him to the Thieves Guild.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But no, in those cases, I would say, yeah, if there's no severe consequence for failure, no huge time pressure, then just whatever they make it.
Man, I'm 30 minutes behind on chat.
Okay, I'll shut up. Jesus.
No. It's cool. Let me see if there's any questions. I'll try and address questions specifically, or things that seem like they're directed to us. If orcs aren't cultured, why do they know what a menu is? There you go. I like that one. Oh, neat clarified. He wasn't talking about actual miniatures. He was talking about fighting in real life. When he was talking about he won't respect you if you don't fight in real life. Let's see. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, yeah.
We're just being respectful for once.
Oh, gee, y'all been respectful the whole time. I don't think this is what he meant, but 28mm says, I love stat holidays. I want to believe that there's a day in which stats can't oppress you. You get a day off from stats, is what I'm trying to say.
You had one, I'm pretty sure nobody ever used it, but maybe one psychotic somewhere, but I think, didn't Dragonlance have, and this was also only one particular age, but they did have the different moons. They had 3 moons? I want to say 3 moons.
And I absolutely use them. I love the moon system.
You were the guy?
I was the guy. I love the moon system. I love it.
Oh,
and it's not hard to track. It takes a little bit of getting used to when you haven't done it before. I also use the morality system out of Dragonlance. It's the 2 best things to come from the first edition book.
But it does create interesting possibilities. So, like, right, for the guys not in the know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like Dragonlance used to have in one particular age, you would have the magic that was tied to 3 moons that were also gods,
Solinari, right? Lunitari, Nuitari. Yep.
Yeah, and when those moons were in the ascendant, so when they were about to get full, these wizards would be more powerful. Or if they were I don't know, waxing or waning, I don't know what the right word is, but if they were waning, right, these wizards would get weaker. But that would that opens up all these possibilities of, say,
because wizards and Dragonlance don't want to admit it, but they're basically clerics.
Yeah. unless they're doing a dirty wild magic, right?
Well, the renegade mages, which if you're at 3rd level, you have to take the test. If you don't take the test at 3rd level, you become a renegade mage, and it doesn't matter which order you're from. Basically, it's join us or die. Even the white robes do that.
You get hunted down and
yes.
killed.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I didn't run Dragonlance a lot. Also, I did my own version of it because too many people know the history and rules and where everything's supposed to be in Dragonlance. It's not fun for somebody to be like, Minotaurs would stop 1 mile north of this, so I should be oh, shut up. And you get a lot of that in Dragonlance. But I did like the moon system. I don't use it all the time. Actually, I very rarely use it, but I have used it. It did work for us, and it did make wizards more interesting, we'll just say. And nobody complained about how cumbersome it was because we talked about it beforehand.
Nice. Yeah, and I can envision like all this extra stuff where you have to like if say one of your enemies is one of those high mages where you wait for a particular day when he is at his weakest and you're at your strongest, right? Like I don't know, probably the effect wasn't that strong, but like this idea, if you want to make calendars, right, and timekeeping relevant, you put shit like this in there.
Yes. And the tracker that Carl had on there was a simple tracker system, is concentric circles. And that was the fun thing, because if you were a white robe mage, everything was so slow. Like it was over the course of an entire month that you had to break that down. You had a black robe mage, like every day was something different. So, and the neutral, the red robes were in the middle there. So it actually made your decision more prevalent. But a white robe mage would be at the high end of the scale a lot longer than that black robe mage. So he could just wait you out.
Yeah, so this was a trade-off too.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a huge difference, or just a +1 to caster level and an extra spell?
I would have to grab the book, but I seem to remember it was actually, especially at low levels, it was pretty devastating. Like, because it would add, especially when the moons are in conjunction and so forth, it would add I think up to 3 levels to your casting power.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty huge. Yeah, that's
somebody
massive.
Can correct me. I'm too lazy to grab the book behind me unless you want me to.
I think what is it? Karamakos might have had. I'm trying to think back. There was one day in the year when maybe this was probably in the Gazetteer of Galantry. They discussed it, but there was one day in the year when magic didn't work for wizards. It was only on the last day of December.
They called that the purge.
It's right, like something like that, and having something like that, you immediately envision like all of these wizard princes locking themselves in their towers and having their bodyguards stand by, and of course everybody doing their assassinations on a day like that. So yeah, that is like having elements like that. I think can add a lot of richness to a campaign.
If your players are into it, I would not suggest everybody should just run right out by the first edition Dragonlance book and start using the Moons of Magic.
Although magical holidays, yeah.
Right. Now, I do believe you should use the morality system because I think it's actually better than the alignment system, but that's just, of course, an opinion. I'm looking it up now. I won't bug Aaron, though. I'll wait till I find it.
Well, that's actually the last comment. I will hit a few back. Arnman said, average lock could be picked in 1 minute. Sure, interesting idea to have lock pick time relative to thief level. That could definitely be something, that could be done.
I think you could I want to say D20, but I'm not sure. But I think there was an option to do it quicker in exchange for a pretty severe penalty. Probably, definitely in the in epic level handbook, you would have been able to pick a lock as a free action if you raise the DC by 100 or something.
Damn. Let's see. Here comes Dan, right? Whenever we're about to close the stream.
You're just closing.
Just about to.
I just got back from work, so say love.
You got a second because Max is looking something up. So,
I found it, but I'll just go when you guys are ready. I'm not going to interrupt for this.
Well, go ahead and let us know.
Okay, so saving throws are affected. You get additional spells. You get 1 additional spell if the moon's waxing. And if it's at high sanction, basically full moon, you get +2 spells. Effective level, actually, it's only +1, but that's also based on the level of the caster as well for plus or minus 1. So if it's at low sanction, you have a -1 to your effective level. That's bad for a first level wizard. But at high sanction, it's That wouldn't happen for a first level wizard for all you Kryn purists out there. I know. You also have, if you have 2 moons in alignment, like Solinari with Lunitari, it is also another +1 to saving throws, additional spells, and effective level, and so forth. So there's a few things in there. But it's pretty much that simple. You have the character track it, and you pretty much know if it's, so you don't have to do it as the game master. You should trust your players with it. It adds something neat, again, if your players want to do it. If they don't want to do it, if they're like, oh, that sounds cumbersome, then just don't do it. I liked it though because it allowed people to have some variances in the type of wizard they wanted to play. Plus, again, if you're not thinking of it this way, then I don't know what to tell you. But on Kryn, they don't say this, but wizards are clerics because they are affected by the gods, whether they like it or not, and they know it.
I have a Dragonlance book. I've never read it.
Just an RPG book or one of those?
Oh no,
one of
like
those
a
novels.
novel.
One of the
Just
novels.
novel.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think I read the Legend of Humo once. Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
I might start, checking out 2E setting books and stuff at some point. But
For Dragonlance, the only book you want is the 1E hardcover. The 2E stuff sucks. And this is coming from a 2E player.
okay. Well, Dan, did you have anything to say?
No, I was gonna see where the conversation was before I had anything to say.
What do you think
I
about?
guess you're running 5e again, and we're all supposed to heckle you or something.
Yeah. You're supposed to talk about how I'm a traitor and a simp.
I'm
or
actually
walk
running a
free and-
5e game now because that's what people at my local store wanted to play. So I'm not going to say anything.
Aaron the Benedict.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So, well, what do you do? Do you do anything to try and OSR your game, or
Is
that not what they want?
I try to pitch the encounter. I try to build kind of difficult encounters, and I roll reactions and morale for all the monsters.
That's true. There's
So.
no morale system in 5e that I'm aware of.
They
No,
stripped
because-
it out too. You had 5 alignments first.
No, morale.
Oh shit!
That's
sorry,
because
I got confused.
monsters are people too, and you have to give each one individual characteristics now.
Oh, every single skeleton I populate my dungeon with. Oh no!
Yeah, every single
That
skeleton
had a
is gonna
life.
interrupt the fight to tell you about his daddy issues.
This is pretty hardcore. Pete Giant says death throws stick, and they are for the character's lifetime in 5e. That would be
kind of cool.
That would be like maybe you could get one removed with a like a major restoration type spell or something, because then it's like you might run into that cleric once in your life or something, or it might not be until you actually meet one. But then again, it would kind of suck though once you have that on tap.
Well, do they have the quest spell still in 5th edition? Because that'd be a great use of it in like 2nd edition D&D. Have force you to go on a quest, accomplish a task in order for that to be removed. Like basically a blessing from the gods.
They do. I don't know how it functions. I usually, I know that James earlier was saying that you shouldn't like have them buy the big book with all those rules that you're not going to use. But most of my games, I intentionally don't take them beyond like level 11 or something like that. So I don't think that they usually had the quest spell by then. But Thomas says, I, for one, am shocked and disgusted that you would DM 5e. Well, it's what I started with, and it's what one of my players wants, and I really like that player, and I want to play in person. But I'm shocked and disgusted, too. Trust me. I have a hard time looking at myself in the mirror.
Oh, wait, are you talking about the game or life?
Both.
I resemble that remark.
Carl says, you 5e guys have to drag at least one player each back to the OSR. Afterwards, we take your DM card. Agreed. Agreed. I will do my best. What I can do is I can get them to play that, and I'll be like, is anybody here interested in something a little bit more hardcore? Then I'll be like, Shazam! Now I'll say not mechanically hardcore, but like you're gonna die probably.
I want more cartoon characters.
Maybe. Say what?
I want more cartoon characters. These D&D characters are too serious for me.
I actually You know, I mean, it's not cartoon characters, but I actually wouldn't mind running Big Eyes, Small Mouth, 4th edition.
Nice.
Yeah,
I'm not even an anime person, but I want to see that game get some love.
Yeah.
Wait, are you gonna do actually Bessem or the D20 version of Bessem?
No, the latest one, 4th edition. I have it in PDF.
Okay, because he has 2 versions of it. He did create a 5e compatible version of it.
Oh no, I
Good.
don't really want to see that kind of bastardization.
Is the 5e compatible version just the player handbook and the DMG?
Yeah, that's what I was
Get it?
gonna
Because it's compatible with anime. Ha 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 ha.
Ah, okay.
I actually said that to Mark McKinnon. I can't remember what his response was, but I'm sure it's on one of my streams somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I see why he did it, because there are a lot of people that they're just like, I don't have to learn any system, you know. But at the same time, you like the whole reason that you get a new system is so that you can emulate a different type of play. So that's the purpose. That's why I'm interested in it. And, you know, I'll probably run a magical girl game for my wife. And
Can I really derail this stream with a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What are you guys' thoughts? Because I think you know mine. I've probably said it 100 times on different streams. What are you guys' thoughts on, because you just brought it up to some degree, on games that go to other systems? Like you have, like Savage Worlds is the one that annoys me. I love Savage Worlds, sort of. But my God, they take over every game. You got Savage Worlds Pathfinder, Savage Worlds Rift, Savage Worlds Earth Dawn. If I want to play Earth Dawn, I want to play it in the right Earth Dawn setting with the step system. If I'm playing Rifts, I want it to be the crazy ass Palladium system, and so that's how you get the right feel for the game. What are you guys' thoughts on that? You can already tell mine. I don't even have to answer it. You know it now.
Probably, like, usually these moves are shitty, right? Because it's sort of like you're playing a console port. The best, I think the best games have a system and a setting that's sort of attuned to each other, and now you're taking something that may have been created with completely different assumptions in mind, and you're sort of jury rigging it to simulate the original game. I can envision situations when it's all right, but in general, probably no. I'm with you.
Okay.
Dan?
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you. It's I mean, I don't care for Savage Worlds, so yeah, I generally agree that I don't. You know, these generic systems that people try to apply to absolutely everything aren't usually my cup of tea. So I guess I'm with you on that. Yeah, this is probably not the crowd to be asking what they think about that, though.
I mean, my main crux is just that every time you change a system, because Aaron mentioned it a little bit ago about, you know, learning the different. I forget the exact quote you said, Aaron. Somebody can scroll back and figure it out. But essentially, it loses the feel. It becomes a different game. So no matter how many glitter boys or mecha or crazies there are in there, and I'm using Rifts as the example, if you're playing it under a different umbrella, it has a completely different feel. It's just not the same. To me, it's not the same. Play it the right way or don't play it all. And again, I mentioned that to Mark McKinnon about, well, why would you do that? And obviously, his answer was a smart one. Money. Like, because that's what everybody's playing. Can't argue with that. You're a businessman. Good on you. But if you're going to play Bessem, yeah, play Bessem with the Bessem rules and all their little crazy points and the tri-stat system and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, can we think of an exception to the rule, right? Like an instance when the conversion was actually pretty good.
I mean, if you like a particular system, you're going to say it's good anyway. I heard people say that about the Pathfinder version of Earth Dawn, and I want to choke every last one of them.
What about, like, say, like Star Wars D20 versus the original one?
I'm a bad person to say that to, because I don't like the D20 system. Just generally, I don't like it. I'm not saying it's bad as far as mechanics go. I just think it's a boring system.
Mr. Cotgrove, I think, answered my question. I haven't played the D20 Star Wars myself, nor the
I do like the West End games.
version.
If you want power fantasy, I think the D20 is pretty good, or because I mean that is what Star Wars is. It's Jedi power fantasy. But the West End Games version captures the original series better than any system that's tried to emulate Star Wars that I've ever played. The original series, and I don't mean like it mimics it, but when you're playing the game, you feel the original series. At least I feel it's that way. And most of the people I played with, even the newer ones, say they feel the same way, even if they don't like that it isn't kind of the super powered D20 that they're used to.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
opinion, of course.
If it's highly transformative in like the way that it uses the rules, like it butchers the system and makes it something new, I think it's okay. But if it's just like, we're going to kind of wedge it in there and it's basically the same system, except for we've replaced, like we've changed some names, we've added different features and stuff like that, then, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there's probably some edge cases. A lot of people really love, like I said before, Adventures in Middle Earth, which is as a 5e system basically, and might prefer that to Middle Earth role playing.
But aren't those actually two different games? Because I have One Ring, and I would tell you that's a completely different game than MERP. It doesn't even try to emulate MERP at all.
Or that, yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is specifically if you make the Aaron the Pedantic game and you have your own system for it, but then you're like, I also have my 5e version of the game, not a setting, not a character class.
So you're talking about just pure conversion. So like if it was Adventures in Middle Earth, like standalone, and then they converted it over to...
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, at that point, I'd just say, just go get the other one, fuckwad.
They're right.
I wonder, I think Monte Cook made a 5e version of Numenera.
Yes,
I
they
could
did.
sort of see that one working.
I mean, yeah, but it kind of loses what I think is neat about Numenera, just the whole, just the way that you come up with difficulty ratings and like
the might pools and that's all that stuff.
Yeah, because those are resources that like you wouldn't. I don't know if they use them in the 5e version, but I kind of would doubt that they do. It's kind of like hero points in a way, or something like that, but it's stat based or how you spend luck in DCC.
It's strange. It's like hero points, but they're also, I guess they also double as mana and hit points, right? Like it's out there. It almost feels like it feels like an alternative D&D 4th edition, basically, which I guess it is not that far from the truth. If Monty had still been working on 4E, it probably would have been done something like that.
That would have been interesting. Cypher System is pretty neat stuff. I know that they're not on everybody's happy list, but that's okay. Let's see. But yeah, like for instance, if and I'm just gonna say this. I haven't played Phase Rip, but I've read most of it, like Marvel Phase Rip. And if they made like a D20 version, I'd probably be like, no. Like I just want the original. What else? People keep talking. Well, that kind of was what was going on earlier. All right. 1E Strixhaven makes me smile. What?
1E. Oh,
isn't that
their like pseudo Harry Potter?
Yeah. I was just
they're doing. I don't know.
Let them have their fun. That's all I can say. My ass is not chapped that they're going to have their D&D Hogwarts.
There was a sort of, I think for 2E, Bruce Cordell made one. It is College of Magic, Collegium of Magic, something like that. He made a sort of expansion or campaign setting thing for 2E where you were also in a wizard school.
I heard about that. Some people were trying to say, yes, it has been done in D&D before.
Yeah,
I don't think a lot of the problem. I don't think that was the problem, though, at least from the people that I talked to. Nobody had a problem with it being done or that other people play it. It's the fact that every time they put out one of these splat books, Players have this expectation of this is the norm. You must do it. Kind of like we were talking before, like you saying you're just going to use the player's handbook. In 2E, it was really easy. I'm not using the humanoid's handbook. You cannot play an ogre. Don't try. But nowadays they freak out. What do you mean I can't be I'm sorry, what do they call the fat bunny people in whatever? I can't be an anthropomorphic rabbit? No, I don't have animal people in my game.
Bunny people now?
Yeah, I forget what they're called. The Usagi Jimbos of D&D. It's hard to tell them no, and they're not used to being told no.
Yeah, I've had a lot of them say if you like really go humanocentric, playing as humans is boring, that kind of thing. And I'm just like,
no, that's projection again. You're boring.
In a way, kind of, but like,
how is it boring?
Lynchpin in the comments has a banging idea for a campaign here. 1E Strixhaven, dungeon crawl through an eldritch and warped dungeon with Harry Potter parodies. Yeah,
that you kill.
Don't even kill them. Just play as the parodies and like fucking
died at prom.
Professor Snape's experiment goes awry and takes over the school basement.
You could use that. Robot Chicken Harry Potter sketch about Pubertus as a. Actually, no, don't do that.
I don't remember that. I remember they did a Saturday Night Live skit. It was a Harry Potter spoof when like ages ago when Lindsay Lohan was not gone off the rails yet.
Alex says, I would love to see an OSR wizard school, but with extremely neglectful teachers and magic traps as they go to way to stop students raiding the wine cellar.
I think anything that makes it less friendly and modern would probably work for D&D. So if you go more sword and sorcery, where it's like, whatever, it's an academy, but you have to maybe you pay with human sacrifices, or like half of the teachers are deranged and experiments wander the halls at night or like across the grounds. Yeah, that's always way cool.
Students die regularly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yes, I like it. Yeah, I think a lot of people just didn't like how childlike it looked. As far as Strixhaven goes, it just adolescent is how it looks.
I think it's something I've noticed with. I think 5e suffers the most from it. So like for all their all their wacky fantasy races and all their demands. I see 5e settings and 5e material has the most trouble getting away from a modern paradigm and really existing in a sort of like fantastical environment, right? Where what people act like and how society is structured is not like it is today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see it. Well, I think that's it for today, everybody. So let's just go through everybody clockwise, and you can just tell us what you're working on, what you got, where to find you, that kind of stuff. So, Max, you go ahead.
All right, you can find us on YouTube at you can just look for Legion of Myth. We have a show every, what day is it? Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Time. RPG Digest. Segment 1 goes over a game, whether it's a read-through, a fundamental, or an overview. There we go. There's talking. Segment 2, we like to get a little ranty and ragey and have some fun. Segment 3, we bring you on to talk to us. Also, we have Aaron hasn't given me I'm calling him out right now. Just there you go. I'm embarrassing him. No, I'm not. He hasn't told us if he's directly part of it yet, but we also have the Gatekeepers, which will have episode number 2 tomorrow night, which of course is a tongue-in-cheek play on what they like to call us old grognards, but it includes a whole ton of different streamers. Tomorrow's night's going to be on Bruce Lombardo's channel, and we're going to be talking about miniatures, and they have me on because I don't use miniatures, and they want the other side, so I will be there. But that includes a whole ton of other YouTubers and so forth, and we're trying to drag Aaron into that one as well. But those are the two places.
I'm in it, definitely. My thing is I don't have anything really constructive to say about miniatures in either way. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I might use them. Sometimes no. I see Bruce with his collection, and I'm like, I can't compete with that discussion.
Well, do you know who he's going to be talking to? He's going to be talking to GM Fritz from the GM's Alcove.
Which is
who-
another.
Which all he does is commission painting streams. Well, he does a lot more than that, but he's hardcore into that stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, if you're not interested in miniatures, we got to hold. I mean, the first one was on session 0 because I thought, that was a good one. But
I just
we have a
couldn't
whole
make
ton of
that one.
topics.
I just couldn't make that one. I can't remember what I had going on.
Oh, good. It was herding cats anyway, so we don't want too many in there. And of course, that's the thing, though, is we're going to round robin this thing. So at some point, Aaron's going to host a show, and that's the whole point of the Gatekeepers. So those are the two things that I've got going on.
All right, Prince.
All right. I'm Prince of Nothing. You can find me at princeofnothingblogs@wordpress.com. I do a lot of RPG reviews, mainly OSR, and occasional other assorted shit posts. I'm also the author of co-author of the modules Red Prophet Rises and Palace of Unquiet Repose, which came out this year. Check it out on Drive-Thru if you have the time. They're both pretty good. And I also recently finished my my infamous No Art Punk competition, where we try to push back against the art punk hordes that are taking over the OSR movement, which is almost finished. So I expect to bring out a compilation somewhere, maybe this month, maybe the next month, but the proceeds of which will go to charity. These like the winners of the competition have all been bundled together into one glorious PDF. So if you're thirsting for like real old school dungeons like I have, you would be a fool not to check it out.
All right, and Dan.
Yep, I'm Dan Vince. I currently I'm running Adventurer Conqueror King, and I run 5e also, I guess. I don't have a blog or anything yet, but I usually hang out on the Pedantic Gaming Discord and the Autark Discord, so you can find me in either of those places.
Heck yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody, for showing up, for contributing. Thank you to Max, Prince, and Dan for stopping by, and Fiore, even though he left us like a little bastard. Same thing with James, but we love them anyway. So y'all take it easy and have a good one.